right?
Yeah. Dom, yes? Yeah.
We are officially live. You can start.
Thanks. So regarding committee members, I'm seeing, so just confirm, or maybe Florence, before you take roll call, Shehanaz Hamday, Adam Fisher-Cox, Tom Ryan, Maricela Santos, myself, Nas Magudis, Richard Kuzami, and Christina Las.
These are board members.
So are you guys all on this committee? That's my question.
Why don't you let me read the committee list for you? It's easier.
Okay, but I'm
Dominic Stiller, chair of the committee.
present.
Then you have Antonella Di Saverio, member of the committee. Adam Fisher-Cox, member of the committee. Christina Lastris, member of the committee. Yu Ma, member of the committee. Amin Mahedi, member of the committee. And Tom Ryan, member of the committee. When we do the roll call, we'll have to say present on the videotape in order to acknowledge for the YouTube audience that we have quorum.
You mentioned Nas as member of the committee?
No, he's not. He's a new board member. None of the new board members will be assigned until the end of June. And they'll get their letter in the mail in July as to which committees they'll be on.
Richard and Maricela are not on the committee, but they're...
No, they are not board members.
Okay, please take roll call.
Okay. Actually, Nas did write a note, which is correct. He is a public member, so he is technically still a member of the committee, actually. That is correct. I just went over the general committee list, so that is correct. Nas is a member as a public member until he gets his full assignment in the summer.
Good job, Nas. So you'll take roll call, Florence?
You want to do it now? You ready? Okay.
Yeah, I'm ready.
As per the chair of Community Board 1 Transportation Committee, we're going to be doing roll call. Chair Dominic Stiller.
Yes.
Antonella Di Saverio.
Here.
Adam Fisher-Cox.
Here.
Christina Lastris.
Here.
Yu Ma. Amin Mahedi. Tom Ryan.
Present.
Roll call is completed.
Thanks.
1, 2, 3, 8. And we have public member Nas. That's 8 with 2 absent. So you have quorum.
And we also have, as committee members that aren't on our committee, but CB1 members, Richard Kuzami, Maricela Santos, and Shehanaz.
Yes,
That's correct.
they are non-voting members.
So thank you to those you three for coming and attending as CB1 members. So today we have a presentation by DOT, and I have full screened my my agenda, so I can't get out of this thing over here on the other screen. Sorry, senior moment. Don't know how that happened, but so the DOT presentation I know is about Northern Boulevard bus improvements, but I don't have the specifics at the ready, and I don't know who's presenting it. I see Jason here, and I met Christy Vanterpool, and from DOT we also have Chris Brunson. I think you'll be presenting. Is that right, Chris?
I will be presenting. Yep.
So, okay, so after this, we're going to have some other items in new business and open discussion. But Chris, if you'd like to start, that would be appreciated.
And I'm just going to give us a little kickoff.
And can I just say Yuma is present, just in terms of quorum. Hi, you.
Yes, sorry about that.
Just want to note it. Thanks. No worries.
Awesome. Dominic, thanks for having us. Florence and Dominic together. Thanks for helping us put this together. My name is Jason Banry. I'm the Deputy Borough Commissioner for the Department of Transportation here in Queens. I'm joined by Chris Brunson, Christy Vanterpool Germain, and Manny Evans from the New York City Department of Transportation. Christy Bontebol Jermaine is your Community Board 1 Borough Planner, and then Manny's your Borough Planner in the Eastern portion, Community Board 3, which is within the parameters of this project. Just a quick primer. Also, we have our MTA colleagues here as well, Richard Hadjuk, Danny Randell, and then Mike Nelson. Nice to see you, Mike, here. Always good to see Mike.
Good to see you guys.
So just to be mindful of time, we want to jump into this, the Northern Boulevard Transit Improvement Project, which is the continuation of a project that we began implementing, fair to say, about 2 years ago in the Eastern parameter. We began implementing in Community Board 3 at 114th Street, well, between 114th Street and Broadway. Many of you folks might have seen over the last couple of years pedestrian improvements that were made at every single feasible intersection along Northern Boulevard, specifically pedestrian extension tips with vertical elements to shorten crossing distances. But this project and much of the work that we're going to talk about right now is a continuation of over a decade of work that the Department of Transportation has been conducting on Northern Boulevard between Queens Plaza and 114th Street. This work and this project began and is continuing implementation. It's currently, we have gantries being installed in the eastern parameters of Community Board 3, but we'll be moving that project and its implementation west. Chris Brunson, who is with our research, implementation, and safety team, who are famous for projects such as Queens Boulevard, is working on this project, and he'll be providing the presentation. So I'll kick it over to Chris. And if Chris can get screen sharing, if he hasn't, that would be great.
Bear with us a moment. Good to go? Try it.
Yes, you should be able to go now.
All right, everyone can see that? Okay, great. Thanks, Jason. My name is Chris Brunson, Director from Research, Implementation, and Safety. And Jason has already mentioned, we're going to be talking about the Northern Boulevard bus improvements from Broadway to 114th Street tonight. So the project limits here, Broadway to 114th Street, is 2.7 miles section of Northern Boulevard. This is a busy commercial and residential corridor throughout. The transportation options that are applicable to these project limits are many. The M and the R subway lines at Broadway, the 7 subway lines south along Roosevelt Avenue, the Q66 local bus, and the express buses of the QM2, QM3, QM20, QM32 along Northern Boulevard. This is a Vision Zero priority corridor, which means that it has a high pedestrian killed or severely injured rate per mile as compared to other corridors in Queens. This is also a future Vision Zero Great Streets capital project location with 79 million already awarded in city funds. Now, because this is a Vision Zero priority corridor, crash history is important here. And here's a couple important takeaways for the crash history on Northern Boulevard over the recent years. First, there have been 7 pedestrian fatalities since 2016 and 15 people killed or severely injured, that's KSI, per mile. 38% of pedestrians injured were crossing in the crosswalk with the walk signal, struck by a driver failing to yield. Now, the photograph that you see here is one of the mitigations that we've used in our safety treatments throughout the corridor to help prevent those failure to yield crashes. And you can see there's a left turn traffic calming that allows vehicles to, or encourages vehicles to take more of a right angle turn when making that turn, a slower, safer turn. And there's also an LPI at this location, as well as many others on Northern Boulevard, where it gives the pedestrian a head start to become more visible and establish right of way in the crosswalk before vehicles even are allowed to start turning. Now, in 2018, there were 4 tragic pedestrian fatalities that summer. Following the summer, we had 3 public workshops to understand safety and mobility concerns of the community and help guide a vision for a future capital project. There were 4 key community desires raised at those workshops. First, there was a call for improved bus service. In short, people thought the Q66 especially went too slow, stopped too frequently, was not operating efficiently. So people were calling for transit signal priority, bus lanes, as well as bus boarding islands. Next, there were calls for protected bike lanes on Northern Boulevard to make those east-west connections lacking in the network. In 2021, our agency fulfilled that promise, or kind of followed through on that, and implemented the protected bike lane from Broadway to Queens Plaza. Next, there was a call for more islands or medians with plantings that help shorten crossing distances, but also provide refuges for the more vulnerable pedestrians, such as seniors or children. We've followed through on that request from the community since 2018, adding many islands to the corridor since then. And then finally there were calls to remove the underused rush hour regulation. That was that curbside travel lane that we removed in 2021 that was often blocked, parked in with loading. It just wasn't being used as a travel lane, so we wanted to reallocate that space and have it more useful for safety. In addition to the workshops, February 2020, our agency partnered with State Senator Ramos to solicit feedback from businesses on Northern Boulevard. Businesses shared concerns about parking conditions, access to public transit, loading zones, and congestion. And in 2022, elected officials wrote us a letter, but also partnered with advocates, community members to campaign for transit improvements, including dedicated bus lanes and rapid bus service. You can see a photo of some of those community members and elected officials shown there. Now, like I mentioned before, 2018 was an unfortunate year on Northern Boulevard. And at that time, as Jason had mentioned before, we were already doing safety projects. Northern Boulevard's been on our radar for a decade or more, and we've consistently done projects. But in 2018, we really redoubled our efforts. Essentially immediately following some of that cluster of fatalities, we installed 7 left turn traffic calming at locations where the treatment was met criteria. After that, we implemented LPIs at 62 intersections from Queens Plaza to 114th Street. This is all feasible intersections on the corridor. Those were initially at 7 seconds, and later they were bumped up to 10 seconds. This is one of the most thorough deployment of LPIs on any corridor throughout the city. And I still think it remains as one of the most thorough. 2019, we added 10 new concrete pedestrian safety islands at high crash intersections between 70th Street and 92nd Street. 2020, we added 5 additional concrete pedestrian safety islands between 71st and 112th Street. And in 2021, we did a few things. We removed the curbside rush hour regulations, as I mentioned before. That allowed us to add the painted curb extensions at all possible corners, something Jason mentioned before. And finally, we embarked on a bus stop consolidation, 10 paired stops for the Q66. This was to fulfill that request from the community that they wanted the buses to move faster on the corridor, make it more efficient. Now, with the removal of the bus stops, it wasn't just to speed up transit. That also gave us more possibilities for more painted curb extensions on the corridor where there were old bus stops. Again, those painted curb extensions plus the islands, those are all an effort to reduce pedestrian exposure and to reduce those pedestrian failure to yield crashes we've seen on Northern Boulevard throughout the years. So what does Northern Boulevard look like today? It's 70-foot wide still. It has 2 travel lanes in each direction with the turn bays where you can take your left turns. It's a major bus transit corridor for local and express buses. It's a through truck route, and it has peak traffic volumes of 1,200 to 1,500 vehicles per hour. Now, this is a very vibrant and bustling corridor. We know that it's a very important commercial and residential corridor. One of the big limitations on this corridor is the transit access. We all, I think, can agree that transit improvements are needed east of Broadway. The existing Q66 bus travels at an average of only approximately 6 miles per hour during peak. The 7 train is a half mile or more away from Northern Boulevard, and if it's even further if you're north of the boulevard. And the Broadway M and the R train is the easternmost subway stop on Northern. One positive note, though, to this bus stop consolidation is that we have seen bus speeds increase since that consolidation. Percentage-wise, we've seen significant increases, but we know in real numbers, there's still a lot of room to improve. The New York Streets Plan is one of the things that really guides our work these days. It was released in late 2021, and in that plan, there are 3 main transit goals. First, to increase sustainable travel modes by reconfiguring streets and making more attractive choices available for New Yorkers to support the continued growth of NYC while reducing congestion and emissions. Second is to expand access to job opportunities and encourage job creation through faster and more reliable transportation options. And finally, is to allow all New Yorkers, regardless of ability, to get around the city in multiple ways without encountering barriers to travel. So why Northern Boulevard? It was identified as one of the 10 key Queens corridors for bus priority in the NYC Streets Plan. With nearly 15,000 average weekday bus passengers along 5 routes. It's an express bus corridor, as mentioned before, for the QMs 2, 3, 20, and 32. All the bus service provides critical transit service with connections to many local bus routes and the M and R subways. And a more efficient bus service on Northern could relieve crowding on the already crowded 7 train. So the proposal for the corridor is to implement an offset bus lane from Broadway to 114th Street. The bus lane increases travel speeds on the Q66 local bus and express buses, the QM2, 3, 20, and 32. Now, although this is the offset lane, as we call this, is bus only, at any location where you can take a right turn, private vehicles are permitted in that bus only lane for the last part of the block. In addition, this is obviously these are transit improvements for the corridor, but we will not be sacrificing any of the previous safety improvements, the painted curb extensions and the pedestrian safety islands that we've implemented over the last decade. One unique condition for your board to know about, since this is probably the most complicated intersection on the whole corridor, is from 55th Street to 54th Street in the westbound only direction, the bus lane will transition to the curbside, repurposing approximately 6 parking spots to maintain these 2 westbound travel lanes. This intersection, if you've been to it or if you're familiar with it, you'll know that it has what we call an all pedestrian phase. That means all of the crosswalks operate at the same time so people can cross all which way they want, because the subway is at this location. Because of this unique signal timing, it's more prone to congestion because it's not synced with the other signals on Northern Boulevard in the same fashion. And so having these two westbound approach lanes will help reduce congestion as we implement this project. Now, what are the benefits to this design? This helps a bus-only lane, obviously improves bus speeds and travel times for the buses. It prioritizes transit, a more sustainable transportation mode. And an offset bus lane, as opposed to a curbside bus lane, allows bus priority while preserving those curbside uses, such as parking, commercial loading, traffic calming, and pedestrian refuge. For example, the painted curb extensions mentioned before. It also allows buses to pass a stop bus in a stop. So this helps to reduce bus bunching, which can happen at peak times. And finally, it will also allow us to maintain any outdoor dining setups on the corridor. Now, with a project this ambitious, we do expect an adjustment period. And DOT expects an increase in traffic delays and travel times for private vehicles on Northern Boulevard during the initial adjustment period. Excess volumes are expected to divert to alternate routes such as Astoria Boulevard, Grand Central Parkway, and 31st Ave. And based on data collected in 2019 and 2022, vehicle volume reductions of 25% during the AM peak and 35% during the PM peak would be required to maintain the existing level of service or the traffic flow after installation of a bus lane on Northern Boulevard. But like with all of our projects, we will continue to monitor and mitigate as needed. And some of these mitigations may include changes to the traffic signal timing or other opportunities we'll always be looking for other opportunities such as additional truck loading zones, curb regulation changes, or other design elements as needed. Now, the good news is that we're already, the mitigation work is already being worked on. We're in progress. It's planned or underway. And so we're already starting our transit signal priority along the corridor. And camera enforcement is planned. Camera enforcement for the bus only lane is planned for later in 2023. We don't have a date for that yet, but we do expect it to happen later this year. Now, one success story in Queens, a little bit different part of Queens, but a very similar corridor, is Merrick Boulevard, which saw very encouraging improvements following its implementation of a bus-only lane in 2021. And as you can see, improvements ranged from 5 up to 20, nearly 21% change in speeds, which is very, very encouraging. You can also see that the real numbers here are much higher than Northern Boulevard currently is, and we really hope to emulate these gains percentage-wise, but also hopefully in real numbers as well. So the next steps, starting May now, like in a few weeks, we are going to restart the implementation in the CB3 portion in the east at 114th Street. Moving west toward Broadway. That will take a couple months. As I said before, we will be monitoring and making changes as needed. And as we're monitoring, making changes, everything's adjusting, the adjustment period is settling down. We'll be, kind of engaging in our work to formalize and make some of these improvements more permanent with capital improvements and really kind of start getting more into the capital design for the corridor. So that's what we have for you today. Please let us know what questions you have. Thank you.
Thanks,
Take
Chris.
down your PowerPoint.
Oh, wait, sorry.
Thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Thanks. Thanks, Chris. I took a lot of notes, but I think they got answered as you spoke about it. My first thought was, what's happening to the bike lane between 55th and Broadway, and then I realized there is no bike lane between 55th and Broadway. I guess one question is, what is there any plan for enforcement? How does enforcement work? What's expected to happen in terms of people parking in these bus lanes and so forth? And if any committee members have questions, please put your hand up and we'll call you in order. So they all jump together. I think Christina, Tom, and then Antonella. But so could you please answer that first, Chris? Thank you.
A good question. Chris, I could take a stab just because of the work that we kind of are going to work to emulate off of the Merrick Boulevard. So a good example, and I always appreciate that Chris shares the Merrick Boulevard scenario. But prior to us implementing Merrick, we began working with the 103rd precinct, and then there's another precinct I'm just forgetting off the top of my head, just south, because that was actually a 6-mile stretch where we implemented bus lane improvements. But we worked with 2 specific precincts prior to implementing and that consisted of a walkthrough of the corridor prior to the implementation of the project, and then educating the precincts. We have several precincts within your 9 blocks. Of course, on the north side of Northern, it's the 114, and then on the southern side, it's the 108. And so prior to implementation, we always work with precincts to educate them about the project and how to enforce. But one thing that we're doing, and Chris talked a little bit more about it, and it was added into the budget because it's going to be a part of a larger expansion with state support, is bus lane cameras. So bus lane cameras are starting to be put on corridors in Manhattan, and we're going to be they're already there, but we're going to be expanding those programs to areas and bus lanes in Queens, and that's going to actually assist with bus lane enforcement. The buses will be able to enforce themselves. What we do find, and what we have found with bus lane camera usage in Manhattan, that there's very low recidivism. Folks that get that first ticket really do not want to get a second ticket. And that's something that is going to be a complement to the ongoing enforcement that we'll have with the 3 precincts that will oversee this project within the larger parameter.
Thank you. Christina?
Sure. Thank you guys for such a great, thorough presentation. I have 2 questions. Are there any concerns about traffic flowing into the side streets, given that Northern Boulevard is such a heavy traffic corridor? You guys are now taking out a lane and it is used for trucks and stuff. And I've seen this happen on 125th in Harlem, and then now on 21st Street in Astoria. So the safety concerns that are present on Northern Boulevard, are there any concerns for that flowing onto the residential side streets off of Northern? And then my second question is, you mentioned having to reduce traffic by 25 and 35% to maintain the current sort of traffic flow on Northern Boulevard, and using Astoria Boulevard and the Grand Central as your overflow. Both of those, I guess, streets or parkways are already overflowed at peak hours for 5 hours at a time during peak hours. So I'm just curious what your plans are. And then for my first question, what your measurements are in order to monitor overflow.
Yeah, so I can jump in, and Chris, if you want to support a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very wise question, given that, our experience, we've seen some of this with other projects that we've implemented when it comes to alternative areas for folks to shop, specifically with streets that are adjacent to Northern 34th. So 34th is actually an open street. Not too sure if many of you folks are aware of what's happening in Jackson Heights from 69th Street to Junction Boulevard. That street is open to pedestrians from 8 to 8 or from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day. So it's actually not an option. Then prior to the implementation of this project, we worked with Community Board 3 to implement traffic calming on 32nd Street, which is the northern block adjacent to 32nd Avenue. And the signal timing there, in conjunction with the bike lane and some of the traffic calming we implemented, really deters folks from speeding. We've calmed that corridor. So what we're trying to do here with this project is not only implement transit safety improvements for buses, but also that transit signal priority is going to be assisting vehicular movements to ensure that folks have contiguous movement at a 25-mile progression plus on Northern Boulevard. That's something that we've also implemented on Woodhaven. But one of the things that Chris had highlighted is acclimation to this type of project. And so as folks acclimate to this, there's things that we want to continue looking at on adjacent streets to mitigate those, kind of quote unquote shopping of other corridors to get off of Northern. But Chris, if you can, one thing that I think is a very special component, but sometimes folks without information on it, kind of overlook is the transit signal priority program that we're going to implement on Northern, and how that'll assist not only with transit but also with vehicular movements.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. We also are going to be implementing new signal timing right out of the gate to make sure that we have more time on Northern, because we are taking one of those lanes away from private vehicles. In addition to other monitoring that you were asking about, we are going to be doing on-site monitoring for at least the first couple weeks. We also have these data services that we use to monitor origin destination trends and percentage volumes and stuff. It's all kind of very nerdy transportation stuff here that we have access to, but it's when you do something this ambitious, it's hard to predict where everything's going to go. It's impossible, actually. But so we're setting up a really robust monitoring plan, making sure that we're keeping eyes on all the adjacent corridors and figuring out what we need to do to make changes as needed.
Just to kind of build it out to something that's closer to home to you guys, 21st Street, this is something that we're doing right now, working with our teams and units to be mindful of what's happening on other streets. And that's, opened up a whole host of requests, as well as monitoring and on-sites. We're actually setting up an on-site with the 114th precinct. We actually had a conversation with the 114th precinct. Fair to say the 114th precinct is still acclimating on how to enforce on something like this. And so as they, get better with enforcing and assisting with that vehicular lane and other areas, we are confident that, folks will stay on 21st Street as we continue making adjustments to that project and areas around it.
Okay, I just have one follow-up question. Sorry, I'm newer to this, but do you guys publicize any of the data that you collect, or like you mentioned, a robust plan to monitor? Do you guys make those plans public at all?
Yeah, so with every project, we always come back to the boards to share progress on what we're doing. Many of those reports, so like for instance, for like Merrick had, if you go on to our current projects page, New York City DOT, and I'll find the link so you can check it out. In that report, that final report, we talk, and multiple reports, we talk about our enforcement operations, what we've been doing to mitigate things in adjacent areas. But these are things that continue. Recently, I had a meeting with the borough president on areas adjacent to Merrick Boulevard on the southern terminus of that bus lane. Some of the issues there, weren't because there aren't really any parallel streets that are contiguous to Merrick, so you can't really shop if you're going into these spaces adjacent to Merrick trying to get off of the bus lane. But what we have seen in Merrick is an increase in vehicular speeds as the bus speeds have also improved, right? So as we learn about where traffic is going to other areas, we're working to make sure that the corridor that we've implemented improvements on and that we're prioritizing continues to operate in an efficient way, so folks don't have to go to other areas to get off of that corridor that has some additional improvements, specifically transit.
Mr. Chair, you have Tom Ryan, Antonello Di Severio, and then Adam Fisher Cox.
Sure. No, I have the list, and I thank you. But Christina, basically your two questions are very similar, right? concerns about side streets and concerns about traffic overflow. And you guys
And-
can hear me, right? So I think you got a good answer from Chris there at the end. I think it's, we're concluding it's tough for these guys. So I'd like to follow up to Christina's question if I could. What's your expected time to get to some type of steady state, Chris? So that, and also, can we get Christina's data monthly? That would be kind of wonderful if there was any stats that could come out monthly, just for information to see trends. But when is steady state? 6 months, 12 months? When do you expect to be at a new steady state regarding traffic patterns?
I think it depends on the different corridors.
This one.
21st Street has seen some real successes. Jason, you'd have to back me up on this. I don't know all the details on that one, but I've heard good
Yeah.
things
Yeah, we
about
have some
21st. But
some
it hasn't
preliminary
even been
data.
in for a year, right? It's been in for
Yeah, I
less
mean,
than a year.
We
I think it's
typically
at
like
steady
to.
state now. Is that at steady state now?
I wouldn't say that, right? I mean, I think what I said about the 114th precinct and their understanding of how a bus lane operates and how to enforce is actually creating some pinch points. And as they and their new officers come on and learn how to triage some of that stuff, we're seeing specific areas where without enforcement, the bus is being held up. And so we're really trying to work with our enforcement partners in specific key areas on 21st to continue to improve those. But, with that said, we like to always come back after a year back to the communities that we've implemented to share and show that progress. And that's something that we'd love to do with you guys, the community board one with 21st Street.
So maybe a year. Yeah, I hear you. All right, Tom?
I have several questions. I like your plan, except that it forgoes autos and trucks at the expense of everybody else. First of all, the traffic flow, you're cutting that down to one lane. And you have the signals you have now, don't let a car, and I live right there, so I can tell you personally, you don't go more than one block at a time. Now, that crowds the cars into one block lane, then you have cars turning left and right into that lane, and it backs up and blocks the intersection. So my first thought, are you going to make the traffic signals, if you're trying to accommodate all this different stuff at the same time, cars can move more regularly for several blocks before stopping? That's my first concern, because right now you're just having a backup at every intersection, and when people want to turn left to right, they're stuck there, they're waiting for the last minute, that the pedestrian or the bicycle is trying to beat the light, the car's trying to beat the light, and something happens. So that's a really big issue. It's sort of like playing dodgeball. So I want to address that. The second thing is the cars and trucks. You talk about loading zones. How many loading zones per block are you proposing? And on both sides?
Okay, so for the first question, yes, we do plan to add more signal timing for vehicles traveling on Northern Boulevard as far as the total percentage of the signal cycle, as we call it. So there will be more time, but we also will need those reductions in private vehicles for us to keep the level of service where it is right now. For the second question, what was the second question again?
About the truck loading.
The loading. So there are loading zones throughout currently. We're going to just be continuing to monitor where we're potentially seeing delivery issues, where there maybe deliveries are blocking the bus only lane, and maybe adjust the loading zones.
Where are these truck loading zones? Because I drive this car all the time, so I'm very familiar with this. I don't recall seeing any truck loading zones.
We actually just relocated a truck loading zone on Northern, in that 9-block parameter where you live, Tom, on the northern side around the block when we consolidated some of the stops. I don't remember every single one off the top of my head, but the one that's on, let me just get that exact location, because I worked through the consolidation to relocate it around that block. And you might be familiar with it. Just give me 1 second. I believe it was at, if I'm not mistaken, oh, yes, on, seeing the street, 60th Street. But there is a variety of loading zones more.
Where is
east
this
of
thing?
you guys.
I'm sorry, can you be more specific? Because I live on
60th
60th Street.
Yeah, I know, that's why I'm talking about it.
You talking
We
about
located
Taco Bell
the
side or
north side,
the
59.
Taco
between
Bell side, the
59
south side, or the north side?
The north side, Tom, between 59 and 60, around the corner after consolidating a bus stop there.
So there's a new one there because there's not the one there now. So that's why I'm questioning.
We had one. Tom, let me just explain, because you keep kind of talking over me. We had one there. We relocated that truck loading zone after consolidation to 60th Street. That's why you do not see it on Northern Boulevard.
Let's see. Okay. And other questions. You're trying to put all this together on Northern Boulevard. What about e-bikes and all that? Because you have a very Wild West type of e-bike on that lanes too, competing for the same space. Since there's already e-bikes on 31st, 32nd, and 34th, is there a possibility of reducing e-bikes on Northern?
So no, right? E-bikes are a valuable mode of transportation, and they're accepted, of course, in the state of New York.
Of course they are, but
So
you guys
what we
have
would do specifically, could you clarify on what the question is?
well, you're trying to put a 10-pound bologna in a 5-pound bag. Everybody can use the same physical space at the same time. And by cutting down this lane traffic from 2 to 1, where you have double parked cars, trucks unloading, you're adding more stuff to here where I don't see the traffic flowing better. I see it getting worse. So that's why I'm just bringing these points up, because I'm listening to you, but it sounds like a disaster waiting to happen. So I'm just raising up points. You don't have to answer my questions. Other question is the emergency vehicles. You have the 115 precinct there. You have a firehouse there. These vehicles have to get out. Right now, they're having trouble getting through with all these traffic calming devices, which is good in one way, but it prevents emergency vehicles from getting through. And there has been notes in the news about longer travel times for emergency vehicles. So I want to bring that up.
Question, this would be a dedicated lane for emergency services, that bus only lane. Our emergency service partners actually really like when we do things like that, because it provides a dedicated lane for them to move to and get to locations faster.
Okay, so if the bus is in the way and people double park and truck loading, so that's what I'm trying to tell you guys. It sounds great, it sounds wonderful, but it doesn't work in reality. And my other question and comment is, what about left turn signals? Are we going to put them in place? Are we going to reduce left turns? Because my impression is left turning is the most dangerous for pedestrians.
Yeah, left turn phases are already on Northern Boulevard throughout. There's very few locations that don't have a dedicated left turn already.
Okay, that's set up. And I hate to say it, but you said we've talked about enforcement for many years, and enforcement is non-existent. So I don't see relying on enforcement is going to help this situation. So that's another thing. We always talk about enforcement, but the enforcement has better priorities than trying to control traffic. So that's another comment. So
yeah,
Jason, if I could just jump in, sorry. So Tom, I think those were great questions, and I think regarding enforcement, Jason already mentioned about the bus cameras and the lack of recidivism, and so I think he's kind of mentioned that. If I could, and I want to say again, really great questions and great beard. Regarding Tom's question about loading zone, Chris and Jason, are there any standards for loading zones? Right, Tom, if we could know, there's one at every supermarket of this square footage, or one of every amount of retail stores of this many, or something. What's the standard? Are they standardized? Or are they just randomly splattered where as a reaction? Can you make a short answer about the
It's
design of
really
loading zones, but keep it short? And thank you.
Yeah, sure. It's really dependent on the land use for each block face. I
It's
mean,
all retail.
we
Right,
can't,
I'm sorry.
yeah, we can't have, and to your point, I mean, a grocery store is going to need a loading zone versus a bookstore. You know, there's going to be different needs for different different block faces. And so we really try to cater it to the block faces. And yes, it is a little reactive, but also we can't predict. We're not prescribing what businesses are on every single block and businesses turn over. So we use we work with businesses we go around and discuss with businesses what their loading needs are. It's a combination of observation, partnering with the businesses, and communicating with the community boards where congestion, where double parking issues and loading issues are.
Thanks, Chris. Antonella?
Thanks, Dom. So I have two questions. One is, have you had in the past where things didn't go as planned and where you had to change course? And if so, what were they? And I'm talking about in this type of design. And like have you thought about doing a shared lane, for example, in off-peak where you could keep some of those private cars off of the local roads? And then the second question, I guess that was a compound question. The second question I had was, you mentioned that there were a lot of casualties north of 70th Street on Northern Boulevard. What was different about that area than south of 70th Street, where you had all of those localized casualties?
It's a good question. I'll answer the first question first, things that didn't work. So we're always open to making changes. And I think, one of the projects, that comes to mind, and it's a very large magnitude project, very different, but has some types of features that we're showing here, is Woodhaven Cross Bay Select Bus Service. And if you're familiar with that corridor, what we did, and this is after years of analyzing, every year we would come back, we would analyze, and we would actually make changes to the timing of it. And so there's certain portions of Woodhaven and Cross Bay that are 24/7 bus hour, and then that are only function on specific days and times to allow vehicular traffic in them. What we like to do is move forward with a very robust project and then start learning from it and then making changes to it. So we're open to making hours changes, and then also tacking on other features within our toolkit to make to make it work a little bit better. Every corridor is a living, breathing thing, and so we do want to learn from it. What was your second question? I'm forgetting what your second question. Sorry about that.
Oh, you're on mute.
About 70th Street, the difference in casualty.
70th Street. Yeah, difference in casualty.
Well, actually, hold on. Her second question
north
was
of
actually
70th
about
and
shared
south of
lanes to keep
West.
private cars. That was her second. The
Oh, yeah.
casualties was her third.
Sorry.
Yeah, so, and I kind of answered that question. I'll kind of unpackage it a little bit more when it comes to shared lanes. We changed the hours, which means that the bus lane also now allows vehicular traffic depending on that date and time. So it becomes a shared lane depending on that time. Signage and markings help dictate and educate that as folks are working through the corridor. The second question, casualties, and Chris, I'll look for you to assist, but much of the work that we began on Northern Boulevard was in the western parameters. Many of the fatalities that we saw, we didn't see those. We haven't introduced those safety improvements. I think it was in 2014 where we actually lowered the speed limit. Arterial slow zones were implemented on Northern Boulevard. And that really began a more hardened look, improvements with medians, LPIs, the leading pedestrian intervals. But one of the biggest things that we saw is specifically folks, that are moving northbound and making those left-bound turns, those westbound turns. That was the deadliest turn conflict. But Chris, if you have anything to add on to some of that.
Yeah, most of the fatalities over the years have been really between 70th Street and about 100th Street. Those are and that's where the vast majority of the commercial activity is. You have more residential and commercial activity over there. And we've, it's a busy street, but we've really have seen safety gains over the last decade, and especially since 2018, when we really have been more aggressive, just with the signal timing and the pedestrian islands. We've added over 30 pedestrian islands over the last 10 years. There's rarely an intersection that doesn't have at least one pedestrian island. And the places that we don't have the pedestrian islands, those are like, there's very little activity there, very little crash history there. So
just to add to that, the land use, right, is very different from what you guys have in CB1, CB2, those 9 blocks, right, or even those blocks between Broadway over down to 69th Street. The land use and most of the commercial between 70 and 114th was actually encouraging a lot of folks, specifically seniors and young folks, to cross mid-block. And through those workshops we did with the community boards 1, 2, and 3 in 2018, we saw that a lot of people, were stating, I do walk mid-block. And so in an effort to deter that or improve that action, to Chris's point and what his team has been working on over the years, are those medians, those new medians that we placed in.
Okay, the reason why I'm asking that is because in our community board, there have been proposed, and I think they've been approved, some large scale developments around 40-something Street and Northern Boulevard, which will probably increase drastically the pedestrian activity across Northern Boulevard. So that's a point of concern, and it's, thank you for the background, because that's what we have to look forward to and be thoughtful about when this development is completed.
We've been aware of that for many years now, and this is why we're being very aggressive with implementing these projects. And we started in those western parameters, which saw a lot of that development, and that development is going to continue. New York City is going to continue to grow, and we're going to see Northern Boulevard developed even further, moving east.
Thank you.
Adam?
Yeah, I have one question, but actually I wanted to ask you something about the shared lane and shifting hours that you were talking about. It feels like the most successful bus lanes in the city are those that are 24/7. People don't get in the habit of, parking on the weekends or at night and then, forgetting to move them, or just getting in the habit of parking in there and taking the tickets if they get them. And it would seem to me that, at the most congested times of day, that is when you would want to have that shared lane to move the most amount of cars through. That's also the time when you would want to have the dedicated lane to make sure the bus can get through the traffic. So I'm curious, what an example is of how it's been a success that hasn't negatively impacted the bus service in order to move the cars more efficiently.
Merrick, the stats that we showed for Merrick, I think, and we're in our third year of iteration of Merrick, and I'll add that link, and we're going to provide this presentation, to you guys following this meeting. I'll be very honest. The big first year of Merrick's implementation, which was a pandemic year, 2020, we were seeing very good improvements in speeds. As folks returned back to work, came back to the city, we started seeing a minor, adjustment or decrease in those speeds. But 2022 and this year, vehicular speeds are improving just as bus speeds are improving. So I love talking about Merrick, because Merrick Boulevard did not start off as a project that was hitting the goals that we wanted to, but of course that was a project that we had began outreach and implementation on kind of in those middle pandemic years. And I think it's fair to say, and we all kind of know this, these are living, breathing corridors, and how folks traverse to them are very different. We also got to remember congestion pricing is a real thing, and that's going to become a reality for us moving forward. And traffic patterns are going to change, we think, significantly from what we're seeing through our analysis, right? So this is, I'd say, and I love to say this, with all our projects, this is the first iteration, of our project. And as we move forward months and years, we're going to continue massaging it to make sure, that we're hitting those goals of increased speeds. And if that requires hour changes to bus lanes, and specifically having the bus hour lanes only working through rush hour to get, that majority of bus users to the train station and back east, then we'll pull that analysis out, working with MTA and make those decisions with you guys as well. We want to come back, share that data with you guys, show you guys, what we feel will be the right tool to throw out some of these things to improve bus service before doing anything and making any further touches. Similar to what we're doing in downtown Jamaica. Downtown Jamaica, we just implemented, I think it was fair to say 2 years ago. We heard loud and clearly that there were some concerns with access to businesses. Downtown Jamaica is a very challenging corridor, given all the commercial, but given the amount of people that ride those buses, which is more than the daily usage of the Triborough Bridge. It's been a challenge to juggle that. But what we did is, in those instances, we actually returned some hours back. So now it's only 8 to 8. It's not 24/7. And a lot of those businesses get their deliveries before and after those times. And that's kind of helped them. What we were seeing, they were getting tickets, parking in the bus lane, loading and unloading stuff. And, that just wasn't something. And before tickets were given out, a lot, we actually triaged that in real time and worked with the precinct and one police plaza, who has a traffic enforcement, kind of nexus to manage that as well. So a lot of things, that we can do, and we definitely want to make sure you guys are a part of those conversations before we do anything when it comes to, second iteration of changes.
Dom, you mind Jeff Martin?
Yeah, thanks. So I have a list here. Yeah, you please.
Dom, can I just ask one very quick
Sure.
follow-up? I'm just curious if, when you're breaking down that data, do you ever break it down by people, like the impact on individuals rather than vehicles move through? Because also, like, to your point about like a lot of people riding those buses in Jamaica, or is it just all you're able to count as vehicles?
Well, what do you mean, like talking to people on the bus?
No, say the impact of speed changes per person. For example, most cars have 1 to 2 people in them. Most buses have, a dozen or 2 dozen, 3 dozen people in them, balancing that per person affected.
Yeah, Chris, you maybe I'm forgetting what the name of that technology that allows us to capture that vehicular movement, that individual vehicular movement. I'm just forgetting it off the top of my head.
Streetlight, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Or INRIX. That's
INRIX.
Yeah, INRIX, the company that has the streetlight data. Yeah, I think it's using like cell phone data that, all those apps you have on your phone where you click through and you agree to all these things. Well, they're selling your data to location tracking.
Yeah.
Anyway, and that helps. They anonymize the data, but they allow us to understand traffic patterns. I was mentioning that earlier before, like with the origin destination. So we'll be able to, as soon as this project goes in, we'll be able to monitor like the before origin destination stuff, and then after, and then, like Jason had mentioned, we can come back and discuss with you all like what kind of trends we're seeing, what kind of adjustments we're making as the project's implemented and the behaviors change, the routes change.
Thanks.
So, Adam, I just want to clarify. You're basically saying that if a bus has 50 people on it and it increases 1 mile an hour, the metric would be that the people mile, you call it a people mile, has increased by 50, a count of 50. But if you have a car with one person in it and it increases by 1 mile an hour, you've increased it by 1 people mile per hour. So that's just basic awareness of how important it is. And, we understand that DOT is doing this to improve the bus speed because they do have more people on them and congestion pricing is coming. So great awareness. Thank you. Hugh.
Yes. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, DOT, for coming. Always appreciate you taking the time. I have 2 questions. I'll start. One is, did you consider a central running or physically separated configuration? I appreciate all the work that's been going into the 21st Street bus lanes. I think it's great. I also know that in certain parts, whether it's 34th Avenue, where the car dealership, where the car repair shops are, there will be cars parked in the bus lane, or whether it's closer to Broadway or Sawyer Boulevard, that there will be trucks loading product or Amazon trucks in the bus lane. And many of those trucks have the stimulated fine program where they don't even care about getting enforced because someone somewhere is or is not paying for it. So my question is, are we learning from those designs? Because I'm afraid that the same issues that we see in 21st will be repeated here. And we should go into this knowing that these problems will occur.
Yeah, no, thanks for that question. I mean, I think it's fair to say Northern Boulevard is very different from 21st Street. You know, and I think it's in some way, shape, or form a little bit more complex given the land use and the commercial, especially the commercial that's just east of the BQE. So we're fairly confident, especially when we have the bus lane cameras operating, you know, that enforcement is going to improve in a very good way. You know, one thing that has really improved Merrick Boulevard is the bus lane cameras. In the first iteration of Merrick, we didn't have bus lane cameras. We installed 2 bus lane cameras, and in those areas where we did, we saw speeds increase significantly, and that was actually at where we had car dealerships. One of the biggest issues that we had, if you're familiar with Merrick, because it has been a labor of love for me, there are some pretty terrible auto body shops on Merrick Boulevard between Liberty and 107. There is a car wash that I'm going to be working on next week that has this issue. But the car dealerships, it's pretty fair to say that we've actually changed that behavior within the bus lane. They were parking in the bus lane. And prior to the implementation of the bus lane, that work that we did not only with PD, but also DSNY, because we towed those vehicles as well. We're working on some very robust enforcement when it comes to these types of projects. Because it's important to note that these projects now, these bus lane projects, the open streets work, the bike lanes are now mandated by law. And as we work with precincts, the precincts need to change their enforcement on how this works. And I appreciate you also mentioning, you know, that fine. Forgetting what the exact name was, because I worked on it when I was in the city council, the city hall, and I agree with you. You know, those fines, you know, are the cost of doing business. That has changed. That process in some way, shape, or form, and we look to you guys to continue working with your elected officials to change it even more, to deter some of that. So there's a lot of work happening behind the scenes, but specifically with what's within our wheelhouse when it comes to enforcement, the cameras, the bus lane cameras specifically, and how we work with our enforcement partners. We're going to be aggressive with some of that here to change that culture. This is about changing culture, and making sure that enforcement continues. As that culture, you know, is renewed and changed, hopefully permanently.
To answer the question about the center running, because we've added so many pedestrian islands on the corridor along the median over the years, we would have to remove all of those islands to reconfigure the street to have the buses run down the center of the street. That would be a massive construction project, probably would be more appropriate for a capital project. But also, you know, all those pedestrian islands have really had very important safety gains for pedestrians throughout the years. So yeah, this is something that this is always, for a number of years, this has been pedestrian safety projects. We've been focusing on pedestrian safety the last few years. I guess at the last handful of years at this point, 5 years, we've really tried to focus, build in the mobility improvements on Northern as well, with the protected bike lane, the transit improvements we're bringing this year. Really trying to get as much out of this corridor as possible for your guys' benefit.
Did you mention that there was a capital funding coming?
Yeah, there is capital funding. There will be a capital project in the future. As I said before, we're going to put this project in. We're going to be monitoring. We'll be discussing with the community boards, and we'll be, talking about the future capital project. So we'll see where it goes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Rich?
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, Jeff Martin was next, then Rich.
Oh, I'm sorry, I had Rich written down as next.
No,
Are you
Jeff
sure?
Martin first, then Rich.
Jeff, Honor System, are you next?
I think I was, though.
Go ahead.
I think Richard and I had our hand up at the same time. So either way, doesn't matter. I'm
Go ahead,
ready to roll.
Yep.
So Chris and Jason, thanks for the presentation on Northern Boulevard. And Dominic, though I'm not on the transportation committee, I appreciate the time to ask a couple questions here. So I have been following both the Northern project and the 21st Street project pretty closely. Particularly the 21st Street project. I live on Vernon. I cross 12th, 14th, 21st Street every day to drop my kids off at daycare twice a day on foot. My kids are on scooters, so they're kind of in and out. We try to be as safe as possible. And I will tell you that definitely along 21st Street, seeing a marked improvement of pedestrian safety there. I also ride that bus, the Q69, and of course an improvement there. So the work on 21st Street is definitely working, and I anticipate similar improvements on Northern Boulevard. I want to reiterate something that has come up a few times, though. The traffic on the side streets, the more residential side streets, that is that occurs, of course, because of the slowed vehicular traffic on the streets that the project is being implemented. I'll say, on 12th, 14th, and Vernon, I've seen these are, I don't have data. I'm not standing out there with the clicker, but, like threefold increase on particularly 14th Street and Vernon Boulevard. And so while I do see, like I said, improvement on 21st, I'm like fearful every time I cross 14th Street now, and it wasn't like that before. And Vernon Boulevard has become absolutely crazy. You can't cross it. And this came up at our meeting on, I think it was March, our community board meeting in March, how dangerous it is to cross Vernon Boulevard at 31st Avenue. There's a multiple reasons. 21st Street project is just one of them. The area is developing. There's new buildings. There's a 700 unit building across the street from where I'm at, right on 31st Avenue. So pedestrian and car traffic has increased. So I want to, I guess, ask a couple questions in regards to that. And particularly, I know this was about the Northern project, but particularly about the 21st Street project. You mentioned that you'd like to schedule another meeting and to kind of focus on that project and present updates to the impacts that not only on 21st Street, but on the side streets. I guess a couple questions on that. Have you been collecting data? Is there any traffic calming projects planned for 14th or for Vernon? If not, will you be able to present anything at an upcoming meeting? I think we're just, I know this has come up a lot. We'd like to get some, I guess, some traffic calming measures in place as soon as possible. Again, just to kind of close out in my little spiel here, I think, Vernon Boulevard is, it's just gotten to the point that I don't even want to cross it anymore because it's so dangerous, and there's no regulation at 31st Avenue, right where there's like a blind bend at 31st Drive. So can you talk a little bit about that? Is a meeting,
Jeff,
schedule a meeting? Is anything going on studying those corridors?
Jeff, can you please put that in writing to the board office? The board office deals directly, daily, every single day with DOT. I have not heard that from you. I've not received it in writing. I will get it to Christy immediately so that Dom can move on with the meeting. That's
Thanks,
a separate
Florence.
issue. This is a committee meeting about Northern.
No, 100% agree. I'm just, I'm
You've never
reiterating
submitted
that.
it, yeah.
I'm
So
just
let Dom
reiterating
finish.
that,
Yeah.
the same thing is going to happen on Northern Boulevard. And, you know, I know you guys had mentioned it that,
Right.
you'd come back to the community board to discuss impacts as you see them and as you're able to study them. And I'm wondering what the plan is, not only for Northern, but for 21st Street as well.
Yeah, so thanks for that, Jeffrey. Would love to work with you and the board. As we all know, 31st Avenue is not signalized, but given a lot of the growth that's been happening, I do know we put barriers there to try to pinch it down, but I'm familiar with that area. So let's keep talking and flow. Let's make sure that we're, having a conversation about that. Because we could already have an open request for that location.
I
So I'd
did
love to
put it
pick up
in.
that
I put it
conversation.
for somebody else. I dealt with Christy on it.
Great. When it comes specifically to, areas, what we've noticed, our office specifically, and these are things that we're going to be enveloping the 114th precinct into, it's very challenging, and it has been very challenging to get a better understanding of how vehicles are coming off 21st Street, specifically like at the northern terminus of the 21st Street project. And I'd say, the bounds between Astoria Park South and Astoria Boulevard. We have seen a significant amount of utility work happening in those areas, in addition to buildings work, which is causing more folks, to come off and shop for those other areas. And so it's very hard to get that understanding, from what we've seen through my observations, and working with Christy in this office, and folk that we're in touch with in this area, because you're not the first person that says this to us. So we're actually going to be setting up a meeting with the precinct to look at some of these areas a little bit more. We also have opened requests for specific individuals here in that catchment area to deter some of that stuff, some of that shopping. I think, and additionally, when we do come back after we conduct that analysis, that more finer analysis for 21st Street, there's other things that we can whip out in our toolkit to deter some of these things. And you guys have worked on this through the transportation committee and through the community board in the past, with one-way conversions. We have converted streets just west of 21st Street that we did see issues with. And I think we'd be open to doing that, in the future, if that's what our analysis is highlighting. So we should continue to talk, Jeffrey, about some of the stuff. I'd love to, learn a little bit more about what your commute is from home and then east with your kids to 21st Street and then on, because that's how we like to work in the borough office. Just because we're presenting on a project, you got to get to that place to take the bus. We want to know what that journey's like, and then work to pick off summer requests, because we're talking to a lot of your neighbors in this area about this already, and that's through the outreach that we did through 21st Street. And so we'd love to continue talking, with you as we're talking to other folks and the board about it.
Send an email to the office, Jeff. I'll get it off to Christy right away.
Will do, Florence. Thank you very much. And Jason, thanks for that response. Happy to continue this conversation. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Sorry for dragging us off of.
No worries, Jeff. Appreciate it. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate your thoughts. Not definitely in bounds.
Hi, how you doing?
Hi.
Good to see you. Listen, I'm going to be quick with this, okay? Just a couple comments. First of all, and maybe Jason can comment on this. I did see some comments in the media referencing loading zones. I think there is some sort of a study out or a form to fill out for the general public to advise the city where there are bottlenecks or where there's trucks constantly parked for deliveries. I think that they'll be collecting that data in order to determine where they want to put loading zones, but that's existing. Within that same article, they said that they're projecting a 30% loss of parking spots in New York City by putting in these loading zones. So I wanted to see if you would comment on that. And then lastly, what Jeff was just speaking about, we've spoken about also in the past within that corridor. And I do agree with all the gas line work in the area. It has been more difficult to really get a firm handle on traffic conditions. But I think that's ending pretty much now. So we should be able to move ahead. And one area of particular concern, 14th Street is really bad. I know people that are commenting they're waiting 15, 20 minutes just to get their car out of their driveway. And some board members have told me that. The area around PS 171 is of particular concern to me because that is a school safety zone and 14th Street goes directly through that. And while there are 2 crossing guards there, it just seems to be a situation where and it's screaming for on 30th Avenue. We've been trying to do this and put in many, many requests over the years to put some sort of a light at 30th Avenue and 14th Street. So I'm sure that Florence, you probably have records of these old ones, and we could reiterate them.
Actually, we got new computers during the pandemic. I don't know that I have the records. It wouldn't hurt for you to shoot out a new email. Let's
I think I may
update
have
that.
records of it. So I may be
It
able to.
doesn't matter. Update a new one, send it out tomorrow. Send it to me tonight.
Yep, and then, we've also, Jason talked about the issue on 18th Street and Astoria Park South, which did come up during the last community 114 precinct community meeting. So those are my comments. With just saying it's very true. There's been a huge uptick in traffic, Astoria Park South, 14th Street, and even down to 11th Street and Vernon Boulevard down to the bridge, particularly in the morning rushes. So, which is obvious. When you pull traffic off of one area, it's like water, it has to go somewhere. And that's where it's been going. So there are big issues there. I hope you guys address them. Okay.
Tom
thank you,
Ryan
Richard.
has his hand up.
Good to see you,
Sure,
Richard.
Tom, 1 second. But Rich, they are addressing it by putting in these prioritized bus lanes. That's kind of what they're doing regarding moving people and hopefully convincing people to get on the bus and not get on the car. So,
yeah, but keep in mind that you also are keeping out of that factor, and I understand the factor that you're saying that one bus moves more people than one car. However, you are missing out of that. You got to factor in cargo, you got to factor in small business, you got to factor. That's a huge part of it. A large group of people in their own vehicles are running their businesses out of them. So you have to factor that in also. But I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is you need to deal with the off streets. I'm not saying you're going to deal with the off streets by stopping what you're doing on 21st Street. You may be able to do some modifications to help out. That's something the study will deal with, but specifically on these interior streets, you need to get some sort of mitigation going on, more traffic controls, something I'm not sure at this point, but it has to be addressed. It's getting really bad.
And thank you for being a part of that, group of people that was a part of the 21st Street, community advisory board, and continuing to stay in touch with us to talk and open up requests, just like Jeffrey had. And, we've been talking to you since day one on a lot of this stuff, and the requests that we have open with you and interjecting Traffic Sergeant Anthong is the work that we need to do. So, we appreciate you being a part of that and continuing the conversation. One of the points that you did mention, and I think is going to continue to be helpful to us, working with members of the public, like everybody here, is that new web platform. I put it into the chat that we launched last week, and it's where New Yorkers can report problem areas where double parking and blocked bike and bus lanes commonly occur due to vehicular loading and unloading. That's going to be a huge assistance to us. To the comment and concern about loading zones repurposing parking. Loading doesn't happen all day. Loading happens when loading happens, and then that parking is returned either to the customer or to the local resident. And so we're trying to do a better job, and this website's going to help us do a better job at juggling those responsibilities throughout the day, so that curb management is enhanced to ensure that everybody has the uses that they need during the timeframes that they need it.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Tom.
I'd like to get back to Northern Boulevard. 2 questions on the traffic flow. During the peak rush hours, 7 to 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. to 7 p.m., are you utilizing no stopping signs and are using meters to get the people to free up the space that's being taken? That's one question. Across the entire length, the whole 2.5 miles, whatever you said it was.
Could you clarify that? Which area? Which
I'm talking about
location?
the entire Northern Boulevard zone. You have rush hour traffic, technically 7 to 10, 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Are you utilizing the entire length, having no stopping at the curbside during those times? Obviously, eastbound at the evening, westbound on the morning, and also are you using meters so people aren't tying up very limited parking spots?
Referring to the rush hour reg, Chris, which we removed, Tom. There's no longer a rush hour reg in either direction. That was removed several years ago on Northern Boulevard within this project parameters. So now folks are allowed to park there, which seems like a big priority for some folks here. Allowing folks to park on Northern Boulevard. So that's been maintained. Parking.
So no stopping lights and no additional meters to move people.
The metered sections will remain metered. Those are in the commercial areas, kind of sprinkled throughout. But this is part of what we're going to be monitoring too. Curb regulations can change if we see, pinch points with the offset bus lane. And that's good about the curb regulations, though they're not static. So we can change them, we can change hours, we can change regulation, and that can help discourage bunching, double parking, etc.
Okay. Second question, we haven't talked about, but in the evening time, these street lights that are being utilized now throughout the city are too far spaced, and the lights are very dim compared to flooding the zone. Northern Boulevard is a very busy road. Anything about the street lighting, putting in more street lamps, putting in brighter bulbs so that it's uniformly lit throughout the corridor?
If you have locations for us, to look at with lighting, like in real time right now, we can take a look at that. If we do receive approval for additional lighting, we can move forward with that. And then additionally, longer term, we do have $100 million in capital. And if additional lighting is feasible and requested where feasible, we would install it.
And one thing I'm noticing too, and even if we can't do that, can we put reflective, clear reflective, not these little white poles or whatever, that clearly reflect when you have these islands and other street obstacles, it'll say, just so that you don't see them. One thing I come to point in under the BQE, between the Burger King and the Toyota, there's an island. It's not a pedestrian, just because of the turning, and you don't see those islands at night. Can better reflective material be used in those so that you see them and don't run over them?
Well, we're going to be refreshing the markings under this project, and that space underneath the elevated is actually a place that we're actually looking to get to sooner rather than later, Chris, just letting you know. But this has been brought up to us, Tom, by some members of Community Board 3. So we're actually working to try to see if we could bring some better visible markings to that location. But we're moving west, and a lot of this project is going to refresh the markings and assist with a lot of that visibility, specifically at that entrance exit for the BQE between 69 and what is that, 67-ish?
Well, I'm just using it as a very hard example, but a lot of these, they keep being added, and whatever you use to reflect it is very poor. It's maybe like a white pole or something. And you really don't see that when you're trying to, navigate Northern Boulevard. I'm asking for highly reflective things, so you know that's coming from whatever direction you may be coming. So you know that it's there.
Yeah, no, we used to have a sign there, but given the challenges there, it's no longer a sign. We don't use those vertical elements, the flexible delineators at that location specifically. We try to use, we use them more so at our median tips.
Right. Well, I'm just using that as a broad example, not just talking about that specifically. All the median ones, the put in, you're not expecting it there. Next thing you know, you're driving over it. And it should be at eye level, not do curb paint or a white pole or something. They don't reflect very well at night. I'm looking something highly visible, so you know that there is a road obstruction there, and you should be aware.
Yeah, if you have locations right now, that you feel need this type of treatment, please email that over to us. And we'll try to work to try to incorporate that before the project, if not within the project.
Okay, thank you.
So Tom, that's a great point about illumination and reflection. There is a school of thought that, if people drove a little slower, they may see these things, and then also that the changes coming about will, make it more normal. So, but it's a good point on both
Well, these are
sides.
needed for however you want to look at it. They're
Yeah,
needed,
sure.
You will know
Agreed.
what's there.
Agreed. So, everybody, we've got another point of topic in new business that'll take 20 to 30 minutes. So I want everyone to take a deep breath and not feel rushed. Sorry. And I think we're, I appreciated the presentation very, very much, Chris and Jason and Christy. And do the MTA reps want the floor for regarding the
No.
buses or anything? Would be happy to
No,
hear
we
from
don't.
them.
We don't usually let them speak at our meetings.
Well, we do.
I'm joking. I
that's all right.
had to, guys. I'm sorry. I had to lighten them over here.
No
But
worries.
no, MTA, please.
No, I
They're
think
probably not a big guest.
I think DOT said it well.
Told you.
Thanks for having us.
Okay. All right, great. So, where does this presentation go regarding the full board? Maybe Florence or Jason or Chris?
Yeah, this
This is informational.
yeah,
We
this is
don't
an
need to give them
informational-
anything.
This is an informational presentation. As we said earlier, this project began implementation in the eastern parameters last year, and it's part of our streets plan, which is mandated by law now. So as we move forward, and I mean, even though it's not fair to say, but I think it's fair to say, if folks know this, it's kind of a designy build thing, even though we have the design right now, folks have areas where they want to see specific types of interventions within the design, like we were saying to Tom and other folks here. Please let us know those locations, and we'll work with Chris's team to incorporate that moving forward.
Sure.
We'll have them send everything to the office and I'll get them off to you guys.
Quick question. Is there any way that the remainder of the board could see this presentation online?
It's on YouTube, Dominic.
Well,
Yeah.
the
We're
meeting's
going to
on
post the
YouTube.
presentation tomorrow, though. We'll post the presentation tomorrow and we'll send it. We can send the link to the board.
We can also ask the chair if you want to send the YouTube to the entire board. I'll call Marie tomorrow, and if she agrees, I can send the link to the YouTube for this meeting to the board.
I think that sending the presentation itself, we could tell them the YouTube's there. I'm sure they can all find it, or however, whatever, Florence, that's a great idea. But definitely send the presentation. Chris, if we could get that to Florence and she could tell everybody where they could
Christie's
view it.
already getting it to me. I'll have
Oh.
it tomorrow.
Sorry.
Already
Okay.
done.
Thank you. So, thanks, DOT. We're now gonna move into
Thank
new
you.
business. And
Let me
Thanks,
just say, Dominic, I just want to thank you guys for being here. MTA, poor joke. Always love you guys being here. Love working with you guys, Mike, Danny, and Rick. That. Sorry about the poor joke. Love you guys. Always need you here.
No problem, man.
Jason,
Thank you for having us.
you're good. If all meetings between the two of our agencies can go like this, then you are good, my friend.
I feel like the meetings that we're in together usually do go like this, but we got a good board here. We got a great board, and thank you for this.
Nah,
group
they're the
here.
best. They're the best.
the reason that I'm, if you can hang in there one more second, the reason I'm kind of closing it and transitioning is because the main part of our new business is kind of about all these peripheral streets and the problems that are arising and the accidents we've had, the crashes, the fatalities in our area in the last few months. So it's kind of a good segue. And Adam Fisher Cox has done a lot of work developing talking points for a discussion about curb extensions and daylighting. So we're going to roll into that, and we're going to, discuss it amongst ourselves, and we're going to request, hopefully, some action from DOT. So please look out for that from us. So we're going to roll into that discussion now. And I I'd like to say you're welcome to stay. I like Florence's input on that, but you are, but we're gonna have an internal discussion.
Christy is our rep. She's going to be here. I already invited her.
Thank you.
One thing, if I can, and Adam, to the work that you're doing, I'm not too sure, because this is what we're seeing, especially with crashes within Community Board 1. The trend is dangerous drivers, and we're going to continue working to re-engineer things. But many of the crashes that happened recently, drunk drivers, unlicensed drivers, we have a package called the Roads Bill that's been submitted to the state, and I would love to share that with you guys, because it specifically tackles dangerous drivers, folks that shouldn't even be in a vehicle. I don't want that to be lost on everybody here, right? There's many people that are driving, and we saw an increased amount of registrations following the pandemic. We have a significant amount of dangerous drivers using our roads every single day. And there is a lot of policy changes that we can make. The Roads Bill specifically speaks to that in the state as we're working to change some of those policies. Adam, Dominic, let's get in touch. I'll make sure I share that.
Why don't you send it to all the district managers so they can share it with all the community boards instead of doing it individually, Jason? Send it to all of the 14 community boards and we'll shoot it out to the board members.
Sure.
We can handle that. Why don't you send it to me tomorrow and I'll make sure that they have it.
We'll do, but don't want that to be lost on folks,
Jason,
right?
So send it right away.
Education, engineering, right? Enforcement specifically with types of policies that do not allow dangerous drivers on our behind vehicles is very important for this conversation.
I'd be interested to see that. Well, let me take advantage of your presence here, Jason. Were either of the January fatality or the March fatality?
Yes.
Were either of those drivers impaired?
Drunk driver, unlicensed driver.
Yes.
Oh, one was drunk.
Yes, we actually made an
Yes.
arrest the other day for
right.
the person that killed Dolma.
114th precinct arrested them. It was on Facebook and Twitter today.
Yeah, that was
right.
That was the impaired driver.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you should read the details of the arrest and what she was arrested for, because
Tell us.
policies are a little bit tricky. I'm forgetting kind of there were two things that she was found negligent of that led, I believe, to the manslaughter charge, involuntary manslaughter charge, if I'm not mistaken, right? And it was evidence of her being drunk, and then the second thing of rolling through the stop sign. Right, and so the two of those locked her into that hopefully conviction, which is going to send her away for a pretty long time.
How did they confirm rolling, as you say, which I say not stopping at stop sign?
Witnesses saw her eat the stop sign, and then the fact that she took the breathalyzer and was found drunk after that got her again, right?
And she was unlicensed.
And she was unlicensed. I mean, that's kind
correct.
of
She was unlicensed.
Trifecta there. There was also another driver too. I'm just forgetting some of these details. But
unlicensed 18-year-old.
Unlicensed
18-year-old.
Yeah. But I'm certainly going to get that over to you, Florence, and I'll make sure we get that to the boards as well.
You should get it to all the district managers so they can share it with all their board members.
And then I'm going to ask all district managers then to follow up with all state representatives to make sure that is supported as a bill in the state. And we'll give information, but please join us in this fight to improve safety.
Send it out.
I have to bow out, but you're joined here by Christy. A really good seeing everybody here. I look forward to seeing you all again. I hope you have a lovely evening.
Thanks, Jason. Thank you very much, Jason. And
thanks for having us.
And MTA reps. Yep, appreciate it.
Right, take care.
Before we roll into new business, I'm going to take a 1-minute break to get a drink of water. So I'm going to be right back, and I suggest whoever wants to do the same.
Florence, can I ask a question?
Sure, of course.
There have been some rumors circulating on some of the Astoria Facebook groups around a bus lane on 20th Avenue. Is that accurate? Do you know, to your knowledge?
First place, I don't watch the groups. I only do regular Facebook and regular Twitter, so I haven't seen those rumors. People say a lot of things. I've heard absolutely positively nothing about it. The only thing that I have been hearing about routinely is how much people hate 21st and the left turn situation. how our district is a food desert and how people from Astoria houses and Ravenswood have a hard time going in and out of the parking lot for shopping for food when there's a lack of supermarkets, and how the 21st has changed the dynamics because people who are not 100% familiar with our district go into the back streets, as Jeff was talking about. And what happens is they're making a lot of turns, trying to figure out how to get out of being in the back streets because they really wanted to go to the other side of Astoria. They want to
Okay.
go up towards Broadway and what have you.
So nothing
about
about 28th Avenue yet.
Not yet. Mm-mm.
Thank you.
Thank you. So could Adam get the ability to share his screen as he presents the discussion on curb extensions and daylight?
Yes. Bear with me a moment.
Sure. As he does that, so guys, there are CBs in Manhattan that kind of draft resolutions and in a structured kind of way. And so with that awareness, Adam is drafted a bunch of talking points regarding the benefits of curb extensions and reasons for it, and statistics that defend these installations. And I wish Jason was still here. And
Rep is here, Christy. Her name is Christy.
Understood. Appreciate that.
She's
Hi,
our
Christy.
rep.
I don't believe she's here because I don't see her, but I believe.
Okay, you
I'm
don't
joking.
see her.
No, I'm joking.
I'm here.
I know. And you've got the longest name in the room, Chris. Okay. So yes, it's a discussion about curb extensions and how that leads to daylighting and safety for pedestrians. So Adam, can you please share and discuss?
Yeah, thanks, Dominic. So yeah, just to back up a second before I start sharing my screen, just like why we would be talking about this. I think it's something we've heard about at the last board meeting. Some public speakers, and not just the last board meeting. We've been hearing about this ongoing in community board meetings and other forums as well. There's just last weekend a rally on the 31st Street open street about this topic of just the dangerous driving and experience of walking around our neighborhood, especially recently. A lot of red light running, difficulty seeing around corners from parking up to the curb, speeding, things like this, and particularly devastating are the lives lost because of this. Most recently, two children, a 7-year-old and a 16-year-old, that I'm sure we've all heard about. But over the past year, I believe that the number is 5 who've been killed just in our community board. So the city's made adjustments to the streets at the places where people have been killed, but it's not the way we want to get safer streets by losing lives in order to react to that. And I would also just say, like, I'm looking forward to hearing a lot more about the legislative package that Jason was talking about, but unless like a ton of people are driving around on our streets drunk, I think anyone who's walked around has seen there's just a lot of distracted driving happening from folks who aren't necessarily incredibly impaired or things like this. And this physical changes to our streets that kind of force slowing down and not just relying on everyone doing the right thing at every time is important, because whether you're driving, you're a pedestrian, you're on a bike, everyone's going to make some mistakes, and it would be really wonderful if those mistakes didn't have the potential to kill people. So what I've done is I'll share my screen now. Drafted some talking points here for what we could do as a committee, as a community board, to request daylighting of intersections in Astoria. It's a very common treatment to improve visibility at corners and slow drivers, especially turning drivers. And these are just some visual examples here of what this can look like. Dominic actually shared these photos. So Dominic, if you want to add any more color to what these locations or anything, but you'll see here just at the crosswalks that the sidewalk comes out to meet the crosswalk and shortens this crosswalk here. And it's the reason this is so helpful is just because, without this, folks can accidentally, on purpose, we don't need to attribute a reason for this, but it happens quite often that you'll have a car parked right up into the crosswalk, which means that, especially children, somebody who, is 4 feet tall, can't see around the hood of a car, has to be standing out in the street really to see if they have a safe place to cross. And, combine that with folks who are running red lights or driving impaired, things like that, that can be a really dangerous situation and, end up in death. So here are some other examples. This is the intersection where Doma was killed in a month or so ago. There have been some improvements here made, including a traffic signal. But again, like I said, not the way we want to get safer streets by such tragedies. Here's an example of kind of what this looks like. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, a quick update on that. I just drove by that today and I saw that they had painted like daylighting, like you were just like they narrowed the street.
That's correct.
Our
So they
office
painted
put the
some.
request in. That's correct. Our office put the request in. After the
Yeah, so
accident.
they've painted in some markings here, and I believe some small flexible posts to kind of visually indicate that pedestrians can come out a little further. Drivers shouldn't park in those areas, and so that you can have this visibility around the corner. Here's kind of what this can look like at street level when it's done in concrete, but a lot of what we see around the city is done in paint, sometimes with other physical elements such as planters or these big granite blocks that I think we're all familiar with to kind of make this a little more physically enforced. But you can see here, this makes the crossing a lot more friendly. If you're standing on this corner here, you will be able to see what's coming because there isn't the possibility, there's a possibility, but it's much less likely that a driver is going to drive up onto the curb here to make this parking. And it's a lot more obvious what, egregious thing that would be to do, hopefully for enforcement and things like that in that case. One other example here in Astoria, outside United Brothers, there's this curb extension right here that makes this crossing easier at what it still is, but was a more dangerous crossing. And then just one last aerial view here. I believe this is an example from Brazil, where we can see it before up here, and then after with some painted treatments, where you can see that additional space that is carved out here with what it looks like at the street level. And really, what this is doing is just formalizing a place where folks shouldn't be parking anyway, and making that more enforceable, more clear physically, in the best ideal sense, physically impossible to do so, so that there is that better visibility. And so switching now to.
Can I ask a quick question about the curb extension for the image that's in Astoria on 30th, I think? Yeah, that one.
Here? Yeah.
One of the questions I have about curb extensions is how do they impact bike passage? So if there's a bike lane, and then the curb extension comes out, do the bikers then merge onto traffic, or are curb extensions only placed where there are no bike lanes? Not that that really impedes bikers, but just curious how that functionally works.
What I've seen around is usually if a bike lane already exists, the best treatment would be to have the bike lane sort of continue through with, you'll see this in Manhattan, for example, on the avenues, 8th Avenue, for example, you'll have a concrete island. Can you all see my cursor where I'm sort of pointing on the, okay. So yeah, you'll have a concrete island sort of out here, and then the bike lane runs between that so that pedestrians can sort of cross to a more visible point. Also, the bikers don't have to make sort of any unpredictable movements and end up kind of in front of cars or anything like that. In situations where there isn't a bike lane and then later they want to paint one, I think sometimes they will paint it around, or I have seen them also paint them up onto the curb extension and over, which is, maybe not the most desirable thing, but given the costs of, jackhammering up all the concrete and then reconstructing there, that's usually the solution, at least in the interim.
Through the chair, Tom Ryan has his hand up.
So, Adam, after you're showing these photos, one second, Tom, after you're showing these photos, you're going to go through your draft. So
yeah,
I just wonder if we would hold questions till the end, because it is a bit of a presentation, and it may be a more efficient way to do that. Would that be all right?
That's fine with me. I'll make it quick, and then we can, yeah, hopefully the things that maybe are questions I'll answer, and if not, we can get to them afterward.
And you could bring the pictures back up for
Yeah,
questions
yeah.
after your presentation so people can tell you which photo they'd like to see, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I've got here is this was emailed out. Hopefully people had a chance to look through it, but if not, we'll go over it, not read word for word, but hopefully get the gist of everything here. But this is discussion points and ultimately a draft of something that I think we could use our position as the transportation committee and ultimately the community board to pass a resolution that would really ask and say that we're ask the city Department of Transportation for these sorts of improvements, and just make it clear that this is something that we actively want, and this is a concern for us, and a solution that is supported here. So the structure of this these discussion points is this top section up here, whereas these are the kind of evidence and supporting facts that kind of make a case for things we're requesting, and we'll go through that in a second. But I figure it makes the most sense to just start with what this would be requesting. And those bullet points are that the DOT would install curb extensions or daylighting at all intersections over time, starting with intersections in vulnerable spots like 1 block radius of a school, senior center, facility for the disabled, and then also at any intersection that's affected by a future resurfacing project. So to just basically get in the habit of, if they're tearing up the street, repaving, repainting, could they install them in that time as well? These extensions could be used to strengthen social and transportation networks. They can be used as green spaces. When they're done fully as concrete, they can also be used for plantings, which is very much needed for absorbing floodwaters and just beautifying streets as well, adding shade, cooling things. There's kind of multiple advantages there. Places to gather, you could put out chairs if it's a calmer corner here. Spaces that support bike or bus transportation. Often you'll see these combined with a bus stop, so the bus doesn't have to pull all the way over to the curb and then get stuck trying to pull back into traffic. Also specifically, and I think this is important, requesting that when and if the DOT installs daylighting without pouring concrete, which the constraints on budget and manpower to be able to pour concrete every time is very real. And if this happened, it would happen in paint a lot of times. That they protect that space with something physical and immovable that would prevent a driver from entering the space, such as these granite blocks, planters, bell bollards, which you might have seen at some of the pedestrian islands on 21st Street. They look like little bells kind of in the middle of that, which will, if a car does turn onto them, will sort of make the car run up onto them rather than hitting somebody who's standing in the pedestrian island there. And then lastly, this one is related to the location of a couple of our most recent fatalities along 21st Street, which was redesigned for pedestrian safety, and in my opinion, pretty successfully so. But it was only done kind of south of Astoria Boulevard, or sort of south of 26th Street, right, just north of Astoria Boulevard. And so requesting that they extend those pedestrian safety improvements all the way up, and simplifying by extending the bus lanes to Hoyt Avenue North, so that 21st Street becomes just 2 traffic lanes, very consistent, and there's not kind of the difficulty of crossing still at the intersection of Hoyt Avenue South and 21st Street, where a woman was killed about a year or so ago by someone making a left turn there in a very, very long crosswalk. So the last part I'll go through here is just kind of some of the supporting information here, and then I'm happy to open it to discussion. So first of all, in Community Board 1, there have been 5 traffic fatalities, including 2 children, and 908 injuries in the last 12 months. This number was kind of eye-popping for me. New York City is a member of the Vision Zero Network. As we know, this is the goal of this is to have 0 fatalities here. The most recent fatality occurred at the intersection of 21st Street and 21st Avenue, as I was alluding to, 21st Street being this corridor that DOT recently redesigned, but still has some sections that that are dangerous. And that, despite the intention to eliminate traffic violence, there's still a lot of risky places out there, and it diminishes the ability of our community members, especially vulnerable community members, seniors and children, to move around the neighborhood safely and independently when they have to be kind of on the lookout, and moving slowly across a crosswalk can make the difference between it being a safe crossing and not. One proven way to improve the safety is by increasing visibility at intersections. This is from the National Association of City Transportation Officials, but saying that intersection design should facilitate eye contact between street users, which I think in Astoria is something that's very difficult to do, to be able to stand on the sidewalk and make eye contact with a driver. Usually there's a parked car or something else in the way. And then this is the key as well, is that there is a New York state law that prohibits parking within 20 feet of an intersection currently. And New York City is able to decide basically which of these state laws apply within it. There's a special kind of exemption in the state law, but this is something that we could request that they follow this part of it at the very least in our community board. Most intersections do not comply currently. And just across the river in cities like Hoboken, they have replaced the parking space intersections, daylighting these intersections, or putting a little curb extension in just to, again, make that visibility easier. And they've gone 4 years without having a traffic fatality compared to much deadlier times on New York City streets. This section I'm not going to read through in its entirety, but these are just reasons that the DOT itself does recommend curb extensions as a key measure to enhance visibility. They give a lot of benefits here. But I'll call out improving the ability of drivers and pedestrians to see each other, calming traffic, slowing turning vehicles, shortening the crossing distance, and then creating that flexible multi-use space as a bonus. So those are all the reasons for asking for this. This ultimately is kind of in the shape of what could be a resolution that to pass, and then deliver ultimately, if the full board would pass it, to DOT making these requests. So I guess to open discussion, I would like to make a motion to approve this. We could of course have discussion and any motions to amend after that, but I would like to make that motion.
Second, anybody seconding his motion, or do you want to discuss first?
Aren't we supposed to discuss first?
That's what I know. I know that you're supposed to discuss first.
My understanding was that making a motion opens discussion, but if
you can,
whichever way we want to do
this
that.
is committee. This isn't full board. So
okay.
Just for your information, a letter already went to DOT asking for daylighting and for curb extensions and all of this by every school in our district, with a list of the elementary schools. I don't know if you're aware of that, if you were at that full board meeting, but the full board voted and requested a letter go out to DOT requesting daylighting and protection by all of our local elementary schools. And that letter already went to DOT and they're already working on it. So you know that that's
we
already
received it in March, and school safety is conducting studies.
That's great to know. So perhaps there's a amendment we could make here to kind of reference that and add this on as like a follow-up and an expansion of that request. Thanks for that, Florence.
I have a question.
You have Tom Ryan, Christina Lastris, and somebody is talking. I don't know who that is. Are you here?
I think my hand's up too, Florence.
The Porcelana, the presentation, I can't see you. I apologize.
Yeah.
Could we take the present, reduce it? It won't shut your screen off. You can bring it back up, but reduce it so we can see the hands, so I can make a list of who has hands up.
Tom, Richard, Christina.
Tom, Richard.
Do I have the control to reduce that?
Yeah, you have control of the screen right now.
I'll leave that picture open, please.
Okay.
Are you first, Tom? Is that what you want? Okay, so it's Tom Ryan, Richard Kuzami, Christina Lastris, and Antonella Di Saverio.
Okay.
Dom, are you still here? I guess Adam, you'll
I
control
was
it.
muted. I'm sorry. I'm here.
Okay.
Yes,
So, Tom Ryan,
Yeah,
Richard
Tom, Antonella,
Pizzardi.
Richard, and sorry, Tom, Christina, Richard, and Antonella, or you're gonna say Richard was second, is that what you're gonna say?
Tom, Richard, Christina, and Antonella. That's how I have it.
Okay, before we go, I just want to say that the whole intention of this, the reason I really appreciate this presentation is because these raised curb extensions that Adam showed us, for example, the first one, it's on 45th Street in CB2. The second one that he showed a picture of has no curb, that's 45th Street, same street, CB1. We know where that is. This one right here is in the Upper West Side, and it's a concrete curb extension. These raised curb extensions are so much more effective. They do not take away too much or any parking. As you can see, they're right at the crosswalk area, and they're so effective. And I think the main reason for them, and I don't want it to get lost or diluted in the other reasons, is the pedestrian is so empowered by the minimum walking distance that's physically a street. See right here, you've cut the distance from the outer edge of the cars to the new curbs. It's just a brilliant implementation that has been proven to empower pedestrians because you're still on the sidewalk. Okay, Tom?
Could you go back to the 33rd Street picture, please? I'm speaking as a automobile driver and someone who drives these roads. Remember, when you're an auto driver, both in daylight and in night lights, you are about 3 feet off the street, 3 feet, and there's everything going on in the activity. Now, these street extensions are fine, but what bothers me is if I don't know this road and I see that, I might not observe that's an extension, and I might drive right over that. So there's got to be some kind of visual aid to say, hey, this road's coming out a little bit, and beware.
But Tom, it's in the parking lane, Tom. Tom, it's in the parking lane.
No, it's still, no, let me talk for once, and let me come in as an automobile, because these are the people who get killed by people like me. Okay, that's the one thing. The second thing is, and I'm saying, people, you said they're empowered, yes, but they use empowerment to get further into the road so that I'm not only looking out for the extension, but I'm looking for people actually in the roadway with the extension because they figure they can go more into the roadway. One of the things that pedestrians have learned is to stay inside of the curb. Now, I'm not saying this for anything else. I'm concerned about my wife was almost killed in this kind of situation. But there has to be a market. So when I'm driving down the road, I know there's a curb extension here because there's not one in every corner. So let's have some kind of sign or marker both daytime and nighttime, which is even worse, that there's something there. Secondly, pedestrians have to be taught, yes, they have the empowerment, they can walk in, but they're not entitled to be in the roadway. They should be behind the curb. That's another thing I want to know, because you're driving, you're paying attention to the whole road, the whole system, the whole 160 degrees, and someone decides, oh, I'm going to try to beat the light or extend the roadway, something, and that also has to be addressed, because there's sort of we're playing a game of traffic, and we all have to follow the rules and regulations, whether you're a pedestrian, a bicyclist, or an automobile. So I'm asking for two things. One, that this is indicated there's a curb extension, so when I'm coming down the road, it's, oh, it's a curb extension coming up. And secondly, that the pedestrians will cross at the green, not in between, and will also stand behind the curb, because that's another dangerous issue. So I'd like to raise those two comments. I think it's a great idea. I'm all for it, but there has to be some further development in those areas.
So
yeah, thanks.
Sorry, go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I did just want to emphasize that curb extensions are always in the parking lane. So this would never be extending into a lane that you would be usually driving in. And I think,
right, I might be going into the bike lane not knowing it's there. It's an obstacle. So you're also sitting 3 feet off the ground. So yes, it's all great ideas, but and I'm not saying I'm just speaking from the driver's point of view.
Yeah, no, wait, Adam, can I just say one thing?
Yeah, go ahead, Dominic.
I think what the DOT does, Christy, is they always put up a warning called new marking, right? Whenever there's a new stop sign, what is Christy, what is DOT?
It's a rider. Yes, it's a rider, and it goes in for, I believe it's 30 days.
No, but it says it's another sign that says new regulation, right?
Correct. It's a rider that goes attached to the sign. And then it goes up for 30 days, if I'm not mistaken, and then they remove it after the fact.
I've seen it prior to new stop zones in Dutch Kills. I've seen a sign that said new regulation. Stop zone is set, stop.
But it's only there for 30 seconds. You know what the regulation is. And when they take the sign away, you're not.
I thought it was,
aware,
I thought it was.
So we have these all over, and there has to be immediate attention drawn to that. So a driver like myself, who's a very safe driver, knows, oh, that's coming up. If I had to want to get into the parking space, I had to go through it, around it, then go.
Okay.
That's what I'm asking. Just,
Definitely noted about an awareness of a new marking, and also see, that's one reason, sorry, that the curbed ones, the concrete raised ones, there is such an obvious separator, not like the painted ones that wear off. So I think that the raised ones, Tom, which I'm a real advocate for.
Yeah, but Dom, look at this picture. Look how far the curb goes. Not even 6 inches. It's very low to the ground.
I hear you. I hear you. Well,
And that's going to be
Christie, we'll
addressed.
talk to Christie about that. Use more concrete, Christie.
Okay.
But let's. So.
Dominic, I would just like to address the second part too, which is I think a lot of the reason that you know, we do see that sort of game of chicken that happens with pedestrians is trying to get that visibility, right? If there's a car parked right here and you're standing on the corner, I think a lot of pedestrians will end up standing in the, you know, right next to the lane of traffic, and totally see how that can feel, you know, dangerous as a driver. But you're trying to see around it, and so to have the curb extension that puts you out with a line of visibility should really cut down. You can't guarantee that people aren't going to behave how they're going to behave, but should really cut down on people feeling the need to get visibility by stepping out into the road. So I think this would be an improvement in that regard.
That's not New York City, unfortunately.
All right, so we'll move on to Richard.
Hi, guys. I only have one comment to make on and I want to clarify something. Extending these up to 20th Avenue, which is fine. There is one area though that I think you need to exclude from that, and that is the southbound lane from Astoria Park, or from Hoyt Avenue North to Astoria Boulevard, Hoyt Avenue South. You've got all the traffic queuing off of Hoyt Avenue down there. As you know, sometimes it can back up to Crescent Street and even further. And there is no parking there. So if you reduce that to one lane, it's going to be another disaster.
This shouldn't reduce any traffic.
Cars turn on Hoyt Avenue South and on Astoria Park South, both east and west. So if one car is turning and it's one way, you're going to back up everything even more. So that's got to be excluded. And initially, when this whole project was started, they were going to start the bus lane actually right there at Hoyt Avenue South, and they changed their mind because they just saw that traffic-wise it would be a disaster, and then also they decided to start the bus lane after Astoria Boulevard, giving that little stretch between Hoyt and Astoria Boulevard, an area where the cars can merge onto one lane there. So you need that area. So I would have that exclusion in there. I think it's really important.
Sure. So your request, if I could summarize that for Adams to respond to, is don't reduce travel lanes, which I don't think these do, and please exclude southbound 21st Street at Hoyt South.
No, between Hoyt North and Hoyt South. It's two lanes there, but there's no parking lane. So if you put an extension in there, you would reduce it to one traffic lane, and that's the main road that all the traffic's coming off of Hoyt Avenue South from the BQE and the Triborough.
Yeah.
You know, so that would be an utter disaster. So you can't do it there. That's that area where they used to have the right on red, which they just removed. You know,
southbound. Yeah, I know northbound.
Yeah.
Adam, thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think this is a discussion that we can continue to have here. I think we see oppositely on this, and it's a very real concern. You know, there is a ton of traffic here that needs to get off that, and you know, it would affect that because of that traffic and because of the width of the travel lanes that are needed here. That's precisely why that intersection is so wide, and why there was a fatality there. And then, you know, not directly to the point of this resolution, but also this is where the buses, which now fly down 21st Street, end up, stuck in traffic here for 2-3 minutes just trying to get through these two intersections. So it's definitely, I mean, it's something to balance. So something does have to give in that situation. But those would be my points in favor of, making this safer.
And my point would be that you could still put the extension and you could still reduce the side on the east side of 21st Street. I'm just talking about the west side. So there is parking there. You can't just, so you can still reduce it, I'm saying that's happening. You just can't reduce it on both sides.
Adam, if you show Google Maps, if you're able to, there's painted curb extensions on the east side of 21st Street now. I don't,
there's existing ones. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes, there are. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So
but not on the west side. That's what I'm
satellite
saying.
view. No, don't go there. Go to satellite view. Okay. If you go back to satellite view by clicking.
Yeah. Well, you can see them right in here. Right. That's what you're talking about, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. So they are there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then I'm talking about the other side of the road there where there's none there on that side. And then you do have parking up there on the east side where you could put an extension in.
And there is one there.
Down here, it's a disaster.
Yeah.
You know, originally when I first went on the board 20 years ago, there was actually a parking lane there. And one of the first things I did when I got on the board was got them to remove the parking lane because it was a big mess. So.
And you're still.
And also, like I say, cars turn. They're turning, what eastbound, this car could easily turn westbound. So, and then you have pedestrians here. All this stuff would block all the traffic. And I'm not even sure what this picture is like, but if you look back, you'll see how the cars queue up. Literally, I've seen them queue up to pass Crescent Street, during rush hour especially.
Heading east.
It's one of the worst traffic bottlenecks that there are in all of Astoria.
Yeah.
And you could still reduce the size of the street. You could still do it on the other side.
I mean, Adam, if you could just go to the aerial view by hitting that arrow and then hit the satellite in the lower left layers and zoom in on it right now, right there, you'll see, yeah, that's it. See the painted extensions on the east side of 21st? So they're there now. Okay.
The east side. I'm talking about the west side.
No, understood.
Or the north side, excuse me. And like I say, you see parking up on the west side, you could put an extension up there. You just can't put it down on the Astoria Boulevard side.
But you would say that most of the vehicles that travel north and south on 21st Street turn east versus west, right? Because that shoots you out to the BQE going.
We're talking about going northbound on 21st.
If you're going north or southbound on 21st, either way.
Southbound on 21st, right now, I would say that they're 60% going straight down 21st, and I would say 30% going down Astoria Boulevard or Astoria Park South, and then another few are going up Hoyt Avenue South. So there's a lot of turning there.
Oh, more go west than east. Okay.
Yeah, it'll go both ways. Well, remember we were talking earlier about all the traffic issues on Astoria Park South and 14th Street. You got all the people turning on Astoria Park South there going west because they're trying to avoid 21st Street.
Yeah, I see that now as that panel.
Yeah. So it's a big number.
Wow.
So.
Yeah.
And like I said, you're still reducing the walk of the pedestrians there.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, so
I will point out that the fatality that occurred was in this crosswalk, which has not changed its width and this curb extension has always been here. So I think this is a key area where, I'm certainly not wrong about the traffic impacts it would have, but it's precisely because of the volume of traffic. This is a dangerous intersection. So
I didn't see the actual, what I would be interested to see the actual accident report on that. I do very well remember it, but somebody in the police department told me that it wasn't caused by a visual thing. It was somebody being in, they didn't, I asked, I thought, was it because people were turning there? It was because of the one-way stop? What was going on? And they said, no, it was not because of that. Now, I don't know actually what happened. I just, but this is what I was told. So,
Look, yeah. Perhaps a median island there in 21st South on the north side of that would be a consideration.
A median island?
An island right in the middle of the north and the southbound lanes. Adam, just put your cursor there right on the crosswalk.
This is what you're talking about?
Right there, a concrete island right there like they're doing on Northern Boulevard now would probably would have been a good thing. Okay, so can we move on to Christina? Thank you.
So I think this is a great idea for pedestrian safety, and I'm wondering if this is the right resolution to also include something about bike safety. So I, in full transparency, am not a biker in Astoria. I'm a driver. Biking in Astoria scares me. But as a driver, I'm also petrified of running a biker over or running a pedestrian over, but mostly bikers. And there are instances where there is a dedicated bike lane. So it's like a bike lane, parked cars, traffic, and then an unprotected bike lane on the other side of traffic, and then parked cars. So I'm wondering if there's an opportunity in this resolution to include something for the DOT to review their bike lane planning. Because in my mind, on like 20th Avenue, for example, you have a dedicated bike lane that's protected by parked cars. And then on the other side of that, you have a completely unprotected bike lane. And 20th Avenue has buses, cars, gas stations, almost no traffic lights. So that's just one example of like bike safety, aside from maybe including something around like additional bike enforcement. Because there are bikers who also run red lights and stop signs and et cetera, the same way that cars do. So I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to include that here as well, outside of just pedestrian safety, because there have been bike fatalities as well.
Adam, can I make a response to that, Adam?
Sure, yeah.
So Christina, there are a lot of traffic calming, physical installations, traffic lights, stop signs, speed bumps. But the strategy here is to kind of drive down into the installation of just one type, and that's called these curb extensions. That's true. That's honestly the strategy here. So,
Okay.
so I would, I support this. When Adam came to me this and put this draft together, I was very excited. So I guess I would, I understand your point about not being a bicyclist and wanting to add something about training or bike lane planning, but I would
just like smarter bike lane planning, because I'm not unsupportive of this resolution. I think it's
understood and appreciated. I just think it may I want to be able to go to DOT, hi Christy, in 6 months, in 12 months, and say what's going on with the curb extensions, what's going on with the curb extensions. And it's kind of a culture change that this resolution brings. It's not like we're saying on this street and this street and this street. It's not so much a working request, but more of an awareness from DOT. For example, Adam has in it to put it in whenever the street is maintenance is repaved, and at those schools and senior citizen facilities and so forth. So I'd like to not put another implementation, because we might as well just say more stop signs and more traffic lights, not for nothing. If you don't mind, just a thought.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. It was just a general traffic suggestion.
But you know what? It's a shit show on the bike lanes. I won't waste anyone's time on that, but you're right. But
just planning of them.
Look, that should be another conversation, and I'm very happy to have that about. I mean, you drive the cycle on the Queensboro Bridge, and you're taking your life in your hands. So can we move on to Antonella, or Adam? Do you want to address that? I'm sorry, Christina's point.
No, I would be supportive of a separate resolution about bike lanes, so for sure. But I think, yeah, to just simplify and focus on one topic, that makes sense, Dominic.
Antonella?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on what Christina said first, and I think it's a very important point. On 34th Avenue and Crescent, when you make that left, the bikes, and I'm a biker, I drive, I do all three.
You bring it up, Adam, while she talks about it, 34th and Crescent. It's just so effective to have the visual. Thank you.
The bikes go so fast that when you turn, you think you have time and you don't. You have to go really slow there. So I was just thinking when you said, or someone said something, I was like, we should probably have speed bumps because it goes both ways for bikes, so that they can slow down at the intersection and not speed through, because they always go through red lights, and it's crazy. Like, I think someone actually got killed, or that was something happened at that intersection. I just wanted to point that out. But my concern, I think this is a really well thought out plan. Kudos to to Adam, to you. I mean, I think it's great. The thing I wanted to point out is on 31st Street, we did those build outs. Whenever you have opposite lanes and you have and 31st Street, you have the bus and there's only one lane. And so when we did that curb extension, the bus stops, either the cars try to go around the bus and the people are crossing from the crossroad because they think the bus is stopped, so it's safe to walk. And then you have the people, even though, I mean, it depends on whether, they jaywalk or whatnot, but then you have the car behind it trying to go around it because you have this steady stream of traffic. So there's got to be something else that you could do with with that kind of situation where it's safe, but you don't have you don't create another problem.
Right.
And having cars go around the yellow line. I don't know what the intent is. Is the intent to have the car stop or to go around? So that's one thing. And then my other thing was maybe we should do soft curb extensions in the beginning and see how those work, and then do cement wherever appropriate, so you don't waste resources if you have to do something else to kind of mitigate that speed or try to decrease bottlenecks in certain areas, but trying to find a healthy balance. Those are my 2 comments, or 3 or 5.
Adam, can I respond first? Adam?
Yeah, absolutely.
So Antonella, before I was on the board, those 31st Street curb extensions, that's what they are. And everyone, maybe you could bring up the street view on 31st and 36th Avenue, Adam, if you wouldn't mind. But they're these huge curb extensions. That's what they are, but they're not the curb extensions that we're proposing here. And they were meant mainly to get the buses flowing down. And maybe Florence has some commentary on how they were created, or Christie, because now we're going to 31st Street. Yes, exactly. They're huge ones that would not be one. So you'd go to the subway station.
Are you talking about the ones under the subway entrances?
Correct. Yes. Like right there, probably. Right. You see the way there's no correct, right there. See how wide the sidewalk is? That's the key food, I think. And so they've taken the lane that's between the towers and the curb away.
Look at the Dunkin' Donuts. That's the one that's I always see a problem. If you the other opposite.
Right. If you turn back to 7 o'clock, you'll see it right there. See, they've actually concreted in the whole driving lane, unlike on a lot of the streets, 39th Avenue, for example, and 38th. So yeah, that is a curb extension. I don't know. I don't know why that was implemented in that fashion, because I guess it was before.
Dom, those
Yes,
may
Mark?
have been done back in the day. I'm not 100% sure. They may have been done back in the day to deter the aggressive taxi livery drivers. There was a problem back in early 2000s where the livery drivers in the yellow taxis, the black cars and the yellow taxis, would linger, and there would be fights and things near the trains.
Right.
That may have been done back then. I'm not 100% sure.
Right.
That could have been one of the scenarios.
So correct. So I think that, to Antonella's point, the curb extensions that are the standard treatment, if Adam could bring some of our pictures back up, they don't force the car to jump around another car. See, like right there, no, the one in Upper West Side, they don't force a car. See that? Like that's a one-way street for sure. But right there,
as long as it's not on, I think, a two-way opposite going type of situation.
With no parking, because if there's parking, it's not going to
Okay.
affect it, right? You see the areas right there are in the parking equivalent lane. So even if you had two-way, it still nobody would be forced more out into oncoming traffic because of the curb extension. It would be just like a car being there.
Right. So how many locations are we thinking of? Or was that already thought out, or?
So to me, it's more of a, like I say, an awareness and a culture change. And I really think CB1 should be one of the first boards in Queens leading these changes and these installations of these raised curb extensions, Christie, not these painted curb extensions, because they don't work. Adam, any thoughts?
East and west with pedestrians.
Yeah, I would just say that to the question about what locations, I think, you know, DOT won't ultimately install these at some place that they feel is unsafe or isn't. So this request is just to consider it at any location. You know, DOT has the experts who would make the final call. And then I think, you know, as far as like the drivers going around, I think to me it's kind of it's related certainly, but a separate issue of like we can't tackle everything in a resolution, and ultimately, you know, the driver is supposed to wait behind the bus there and not go into oncoming traffic. Driver behavior being another thing that is of course difficult for for everyone, including, you know, the police to enforce and to design around. But I think, you know, I would assume that if DOT found that at a corner it was going to cause this behavior or something, they would hopefully install measures to you know, stop that behavior as well, or reconsider the location, whatever that might be.
Yeah, but I think in like that corner, it's just you, like if you go there in the morning, well, when everyone's going to school and work, it's like you'll have like a huge long line of traffic. So I don't know realistically if you're going to have people when they're trying to rush to get to work and school behaving in a manner that you want them to behave in. I think you're trying to find a happy medium where you can get these people to get to where they need to be going in a safe manner. And so I think that's something that we need to think about in those type of situations. But you know, that's my 2 cents on that. But.
Antonella, if you could look at the picture right there, if that was a painted curb extension or no curb extension, to the left and the right of the white car,
No.
the cars behind would feel an ability to drive right around the, you know, any stopped car and kind of cut the corner real close there. This
one's okay. This one's okay because there's no way for another car to go around it unless, like, I mean, there's enough room for like cars in the beyond to like double park, I guess, if someone's double parking, that they can get around. This one's okay. I'm more worried about like those situations where you have just like to do a soft extension first, see how it works and tweak it before you make a huge commitment in terms of, you know, because maybe there could be, you know, some other adjustments done to make it more effective in a situation where you have like that bottleneck on, what was it, like on Astoria, was that Astoria Boulevard that you were showing before with all the intersections where someone had the fatality that Richard was talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, just to be thoughtful about it instead of like at first, like there's no harm in like testing it out, seeing it, tweaking it, maybe, you know, doing some sort of adjustment, still keeping what the intent of the plan is, so that you find that happy medium, safety and efficiency and, you know, flow of traffic. That's just my, you know, I think we have to just not rush into it, but still, you know, get it done.
Tom, being mindful of time, it's
I'm sure I am, but it's
8:57. You have you, Ma, and you have Nas waiting.
I'm not sure who was first. So
you, Ma, and then
you.
Nas. It's
Thanks.
8:57, 8:58.
Thanks. You.
Thank you, Dom. Thank you, Anna, for putting this together. It's a wonderful idea, and we need to get this done. My recommendation for possible amendments, while I believe that we need daylighting at every intersection, there are limits to budget, limited manpower at DOT nowadays. I would suggest that we take 2 pairs of similar streets, something like a Newton Road and a Newton Avenue and a 30th Avenue and a Broadway, and recommend that DOT puts in daylighting at every intersection along each of those corresponding pairs so that we can do a comparison. and have our own neighbors and residents kind of figure out for themselves whether that's something that they would like. Because while I appreciate Adam and everyone here advocating for these street changes, I think something as simple as daylighting, as they will advocate for themselves. And if we make this resolution as concrete and as specific as possible, I think we will have a better chance of getting a tangible result sooner rather than later.
Adam, you want to comment to that on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two schools of thought that can maybe be combined here in a way. I think there is. I feel that there is value in saying we would like this everywhere, and I think there's an implicit understanding that will take a very long time, and thus, let's start with the current text of it saying to start with intersections within a 1 block radius of any school, senior center, or facility for the disabled. I think it could be nice to also, if we feel that we can identify a key corridor or two that we would also recommend starting with. To your point, I think it does make sense to have a more concrete request to start with here. I think a part of what I'm getting at here, though, is the sort of continual feedback loop of going quarter by quarter, as we see with bike lanes or other street changes, where there's the kind of continual should we do this street now, or we're tackling this this corner now, or it doesn't add up to a whole vision. So I think saying that we kind of want it everywhere, but also being able to say, can we pilot it in a place, could be a good combination.
Yeah, Adam, I totally agree with you. I would love if every intersection was daylighted. I think that historically DOT has been very cautious, and we just look at like the proposals with the bus lanes, they take years just to roll out one bus lane. So I think there's a lot of value in having immediate impact. And what I think, and you think, the positive response to that immediate implementation will empower DOT to make system-wide, neighborhood-wide changes without this back and forth that we have whenever we make any sort of street changes.
If we could, if I may, if we could incorporate some verbiage in that first paragraph about 10 models or 10 pilots within, so many years, if we could think about a way to do that, and the goal was to kind of make this a working meeting and edit this, and I know we're beyond 9 o'clock, but if we could, put our heads together and maybe put in the chat any edit to that first paragraph about, because it is a good point. Adam's point is also good, that it's, it's kind of implied that it's budget driven, and it's also understood or assumed that they would attack the worst culprits now, obviously with priority. So let's hear from Nas and Tom, and then talk about putting some edits to this, possibly. Let's do that. So Nas, I think Nas was before Tom. I'm not sure.
Yes, he was.
Tom, yeah, Nas.
Yeah, hi. I was just gonna say what he was, but I won't take up too much time. But I think, yeah, the ask here for starting at schools, senior centers, all that stuff is fine. But yeah, I think a little bit more of a laser focus ask, a hard ask, is, from my experience in working with DOT, always helpful, and kind of gets them out of that reactionary mode when they know that they have partners that are actually interested in seeing a result. For better or worse, when I've seen that when they feel like things are going to be a battle, sometimes they also end up being a bit timid in their implementations, and sometimes half measures end up being worse than no measures at all. So great presentation, Adam. I totally agree that, yeah, I would maybe have a little bit more ambitious verbiage, and I think some very specific sites would be a super great starting point. That's all.
Can I just jump in for a quick second, Tom? I apologize. We asked for some 16 sites specifically. The board office sent a letter asking for every public elementary school to have either daylighting or some kind of safety effect put around each crosswalk. So we gave them a specific list of exact sites already.
Yeah, and that's fantastic. I was actually super happy to hear that that was the case. And I know that there's a lot of momentum after the 21st and 21st crash. But yeah, I mean, again, you know, there are also like high traffic areas on the main commercial strips that would absolutely benefit from that as well. So I would say let's maybe think a little big and go beyond the specific schools, because then it's more of an invitation. So I think it kind of opens up the conversation a bit further.
So this letter was sent.
Tom was waiting, Tom.
Sure. Florence, this letter was sent this March?
No, it was sent, I don't know if it was a month or 2 months ago.
Okay.
It was voted at a meeting, at a full board meeting, and it was sent immediately.
Might have
Every meeting, after every single meeting.
Yep.
When letters are voted on, they're sent out within, I guess, a week to 2 weeks, depending on the flow of work in the office.
It might have been, I might have missed a meeting this winter. I think I did. Could I ask you to email that to me, please? And Tom, Tom, please.
Okay, I'm just waiting for everyone to stop talking.
Yeah,
Can you
yeah.
go back to that street on 54th Street that you had? I just want to give my observation of that picture, what's not right about it.
Is this the street you meant?
Yes. Okay, I'm looking at the street. I see the pedestrian to left. He goes into the intersection. First car wants to go right. He waits for him, so he's blocking the traffic. Second car wants to go left. There's a pedestrian there. I see a line of cars. I see no double park, no delivery trucks, which is unheard of, and lights changing. Everybody's moving, and the guy pedestrian here went from in here. There's got to be a way to. I can't explain it, but there has to be more better sense and flow, because this is too perfect a picture. And if you put in, and then the lights change, and the guy who's 7 cars back, he's got to get to whoever, and he's going to go through the light. So we've got to come up with an idea that addresses the pedestrian, the cars, the bikes, everything. And where in this one, the curb extenders, yeah, I'm way back. I can see some posts. I say, oh, there's something there. It's good to know. But in a lot of cases, they're not. So there's got to be a multifaceted thing here, not just obstacles, but traffic timing, pedestrian timing. Another thing too, I noticed a lot of these spots, they fix up really nice with a white paint, but that paint fades quickly. Like to the left here, you see it's fading already. We need to have more of a longer lasting paint that stays almost permanent, that doesn't fade away, because they tend to build these things and then they fall apart. So we really got to look at this at many different angles. So it's not just traffic calming, it's everything calming. So
yeah,
just wanted to give my observations about
appreciate it, Tom. And
looks like a posed picture.
But it's from Google Maps, and it's these ones. These are the ones on the Upper West Side that I always see, and I always say, why do they get the raised curb extensions in the Upper West Side, and we get the painted ones that everybody ignores? So that's the point of this photo. But you are right; it certainly is a perfect photo. But that's why the raised ones are better for pedestrians.
Oh, I agree with you.
I'm
not just kidding. I'm just saying from an observation of everyone in the chamber. Yes, you're accomplishing one thing with the extensions, but there are other things that are not being addressed. So that's
true.
So that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But it's a great idea and a great presentation. Thank you.
Thanks. You is next, I guess. You.
Yes. So to Florence's point, how we sent out a letter with all the schools spelled out. I think, yes, we want this in everywhere in all schools. But sort of like spelling them out all of them is not in service of getting something tangible in a finite timeline. So if instead we said we want this at PS 112, IS whatever by the end of 2023, I think that is a start. I think that we need a solid ask instead of saying we just want this everywhere.
Could the solid ask be at the front of one school chosen by DOT by the end of 2024?
I mean, sure.
Right? Because I think they're the experts. Like Adam says, they are the experts. We're not.
Yeah.
So
I would think it's more than one, but yeah.
But to reiterate, we asked for all elementary schools, public elementary schools. It wasn't a one-off ask.
Right.
The board made a comment and the vote was for elementary schools in our district. And we did hold a minute. We did the public schools in our district. And that was the ask. And there's a list of some 20, I think it's about 20. I can count it off now if you want me to.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
No need. There's no need for it.
Oh,
And,
okay.
That is understood.
It was public,
if
yeah.
it's not specific enough, is this within
exact address? It was exact.
Is this within 5 years or 10 years or 20 years?
We don't give them a time frame. It's budget. If they have the budget to do it tomorrow. If they have the budget to do it over 5 years, they do it over. It's all dependent on money. And right now, every agency is being trimmed down by 4%. And we are looking at a major immigration issue in our district. We just got 2 more homeless shelters this week, and we're getting buildings taken over for the immigrants coming into our area now. They're taking over buildings that are no longer being used to house immigrants.
I
so
get it.
It's city budget. If the budget's there.
I understand, which is why I would be in favor of being as specific as possible, knowing the constraints across the city in the budget, saying we want this in XYZ places, ideally by X, Y, and Z time. So that's all I'm saying. And
yeah, that's why we asked for the elementary schools after the accident occurred, and we gave each name of the school, we gave each address. And right now, as Christy said, DOT is going out and school safety is studying those locations that our office provided.
So, we're going to break for the summer. We've had these 2 fatalities. The discussion at every meeting, the last 2 or 3 meetings, has all been about fixing this problem. And I think we as a board would have a positive
Dominic,
impact.
Can you read your email? I sent it to you. See what it says. It says basically the same thing you put in your, what do you call this? Resolution. It says the same thing. Exactly.
Okay, thanks. So, Adam, can you forward this to Adam? Can you put it on the screen, Adam? Would that be all right? Let's do that. It's a great starting point. Looks great. Adam, coming to you. Adam, you there?
Yep.
Okay.
Haven't received anything yet.
No, I just sent it.
Damn it.
Well, I could share too, but I figure you have the share. Thank you, Florence.
Well, while we're waiting for this, I think with the consideration that we are breaking for the summer, I think going for something specific here, I think has a lot of value in terms of like being able to check up on a key metric that we've asked for, a key project that we've asked for. Unless we have a kind of unanimous idea of one place to start, that feels to me like a whole discussion of its own of like what to prioritize first. And I feel that there is value in setting something that realistically is just a statement of desire for an ideal, and then potentially in the next year being able to follow it up with, okay, we said this, here's the given we've had some time to think about this, or given conditions or the success of some of the recent projects that have happened, whatever it may be, here is a list of 1, 2, 3 corridors or specific locations that we would like to see the sort of thing that we generally talked about in this resolution, and can send that to DOT. I just worry that much as I agree with Hughes, position on wanting something specific, that deciding that, especially in the rest of this meeting, which is already quite long and it's late, before we break for the summer, feels kind of insurmountable to unrealistic to do.
Okay, move the shade to the new design.
So, Adam, following up on that, and I've read the letter, and it's a good letter, but I do think Florence and the team, what we're asking for in this resolution is going one step further than this, and I do think that there's no harm in getting a strong resolution from the board, which says to the DOT, we support you in the installation of these specific measures. I think here
But that's what it's saying, Tom.
Well, I
This is a
understand,
letter.
but okay, if I may, daylighting in itself, in my neighborhood, from my experience, is a place where they say no standing, adjacent to the crosswalk, and trucks are just notoriously parking in it. To me, daylighting could be more specific. I think that this resolution picks up from this letter in a really positive way. Do we want to do something significant before the summer? I would hope that we could by voting on this resolution. It doesn't contradict this, and it would, I don't know if we need to edit the resolution by saying one school per year. I don't think so.
But then you're limiting it. If they're
No,
doing,
I'm not.
can you
I
show
agree.
the locations? Can you show the locations, please?
What do you mean? Oh,
So,
okay, right.
so here are all the locations.
Yeah.
Because of all the fatalities and because of what happened, school safety is looking at it now. Why? I'm asking, I'm not being assertive. I'm asking, if they're looking at it and they're able to do something with paint today, why would we, even if and then move too hard, why would we stop them because of what happened? They are looking at it. They took us seriously. Christy just told you that. And these are all the locations. Some of these locations are not going to qualify and some will. And why would we stop them from doing it? Because of the age of the children. These are very young children, and this is something that is direly needed. And this is something that the board voted on. Now, you may have been absent from the meeting and not aware of it. This has been, all of these are a lot of, you have to go by the underlines. There are a lot of locations.
Yeah, no, it's great.
Thank you.
If I may, this would not contradict this at all, and certainly we would support it. I think the key part relating to this would be if and when they install daylighting without casting concrete curb, which I think we could 100% expect them to do. In all of these cases, it's going to be paint first. If they say yes to this enthusiastically and install them everywhere, it's going to be paint first, and then over time, with capital money, concrete. Just requesting that they protect that space with something more physical than paint or just these little flexible posts, which I think is the key difference here. I think this builds upon and doesn't contradict in any way this, which is a great start that we already have.
Why don't we go to the chair and ask if we can just formulate a letter and just send a letter on behalf of the board and send it 1, 2, 3 rather than going through all of this. That's how this occurred. There was a dialogue at the board about the road safety. It came up, the board voted 1, 2, 3 on this letter, and the letter went out the next day. So bring up in your report that you want to mention to DOT when they're doing daylighting moving forward, and put it in writing and send it out right away. We sent these sites.
I guess I'm not understanding what's the harm of voting on this now.
Yeah, I think there's stronger things we can
vote. I never said not to vote. I never said that. Never interject. I would never.
Florence, he didn't say that you did. He was just asking, I think.
Sorry, I didn't want to be misunderstood. I apologize.
No, I think he was just asking a timely question on, is there still value in this resolution? And I still think that there is, even though this letter is great. I think that it strengthens this letter, and it kind of, it complements this letter. It's not redundant to this letter in that it's more specific. So I would still like us to, I still would like to, at the end of discussion, second, or have somebody second the motion. Tom?
I have a question. I believe what we're talking about is this email I got yesterday. It's drafted by Adam. This is what we're discussing, correct?
Correct.
So I haven't a chance to really review this. I sat through. Why don't we make our June meeting, because we have one scheduled ready, to read this ahead of time, put our 2 cents and work on just this and get out a really good one for our last public meeting in June.
So I don't think we have a meeting scheduled for June. This is.
We
We
could have one.
rescheduled it. We rescheduled it for now, Tom, because DOT had this timely event with the Northern
No, I'm not
Boulevard.
talking about, I'm just talking about the committee itself working on this.
Oh, understood, Tom, but you're asking for an additional meeting in June, which I'm okay with if it happens before the June meeting. But I would like to have a vote, to be responsive to the problems in the community this spring and not push it off to next fall. So
I'm not asking.
no,
I'm
I know
saying-
you're not. I'm agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with Tom Ryan. Provided we have a committee meeting before the June meeting, I think it's a good suggestion.
Let's have one, because there's a lot to digest, and Adam has got a lot of good points here, and I think we could strengthen it and prove it early in June, and when we meet later in June, we have a committee finalization or whatever, just not the intent, but really include all the things that have been discussed since this was drafted.
Sure, it's a good point. Is there any way that we can have the vote and still strengthen it before the May meeting? Adam, what are your thoughts to use in Tom's comment?
I think it's a fair point. I mean, I think if we are able to put a June meeting on the calendar that we know is before the June full board meeting, then I think that makes sense. I know this was sent out pretty quickly before this meeting. I guess my pitch for definitely voting on this before we break for summer, whether that's today or in a June meeting we schedule, is just that there's definitely far more specific, stronger, targeted things we can do. I think it would be great to get something vague and broad that maybe is easier to agree upon than negotiating which specific locations, things like that we can then point back to in the next year and say we've passed this more broad request and now we have some specific requests to build upon that. I would be concerned that by amending this so significantly to make it specifically more targeted, especially if we can have a June meeting, it just won't happen before the summer. So
I gotta interrupt. We don't have to be that specific. That's crazy trying to be specific. You're raising some good bullet points that should be general so they could be interpreted broadly. And that's going to be our resolution, to come down and list every little thing that comes after this. I think it's not going to happen, but I don't think we can make a motion to prove the intent and of this draft, but I don't think this is the way to do it, to say, oh, we're going to vote on something that we should conclude, but we're not going to discuss it ad nauseum. We talked about it all day today. You have time to read your thing.
Right.
We come back and say, okay, other than a couple of tweaks, we come up with your draft becomes a final resolution.
Yeah.
And just a resolution, not specific to areas or anything like that, because that's, it's not going to happen.
So when is the June meeting, Florence? Is it June 13th? Would you know?
Yes, I know. June 20th. We have a calendar on the website, June 20th.
Thanks.
So you'd have to wait to schedule the meeting till I get back in the office tomorrow, so I can see what other calendar dates are, so that I can give you an open date. I'll contact you tomorrow. It's best if you follow up with a phone call, Dom, and we can get you in June.
What do we usually meet the second Wednesday? That's the
Can't
14th.
guarantee it, Tom. I have other things.
Florence, what Tom,
Where-
it's great to pencil it in. I like what Tom's doing, if you don't mind.
I cannot do that, Dominic.
We're not
We are,
penciling it in, we're penciling it in.
We can always change the date as long as it's for the 20th.
okay.
Yeah.
No, it's going to definitely be before the 20th. Absolutely. Our office and
Right.
every city agency
You're
is
suggesting
being
the 7th,
audited.
Tom? The 7th you're suggesting?
I was suggesting we usually meet this is the second Tuesday of May. How about the second Tuesday of June? And I
14th.
believe we meet on the 20th.
I just would like to get it discussed and finalized before so close to the 20th.
So
I
let's make it-
agree.
Let's make it another date then.
7th.
Make it the 7th. 7th sounds good.
But I can't
Sure.
guarantee that I
Understood,
don't
understood.
have,
Right, just make a tentative date.
The one,
Okay.
right, the one thing that we'd like to do is dedicate the meeting to that discussion. And there will be new members. And so please, if we could all support each other to say, we touched on that, let's try to move ahead from here and not go back to the start. And so
Right.
let's pencil in the 7th, pencil
there
it
are
in.
no new
Lawrence,
members till July, hon.
Pardon me?
No
Not
new
important.
members till
No, I
July.
mean,
We got enough
absent,
people, let's just
absent
do it.
members. I mean, absent members, Florence. There's a few absent members, right? Maybe, I mean, maybe is Vanessa? Right? We're not all here.
We have 9 now, so we have quorum.
Well, Richard's, I don't know if Richard, are you on this?
No,
Right, so.
you're
it's-
missing,
We have 7, we have 7
Amin
today.
Mahedi. It looks like Amin Mahedi is the only one missing,
Okay,
actually.
Vanessa's not on this?
Hello,
Vanessa's not on this.
you called me, I'm sorry.
Hey, Rich.
Richard? I was on
No,
mute.
we're okay. Just making sure you're,
No, I'm
So-
not, I'm not a member of this committee, so I can't vote.
understood,
Okay.
understood. We were doing a count
So
for,
Dominic, just pick a date before the
7th.
next meeting and that's what we're gonna do.
Adam, is 7th okay with you, Adam?
I'll make it okay. Yeah.
Yeah, you sure?
Yeah.
Can't do it to 7th. It's the land use meeting. This is what I'm
Okay.
talking about. Why don't we just wait
Yeah,
till
yeah.
tomorrow?
Very good, very
Let
good.
me do
Okay.
my work.
All
So
right.
pick a date and make it out right away.
We don't know how
I
to
will
stop you,
do it
Florence.
tomorrow.
Florence, we don't know how to stop you from doing your work. We're letting you do your work. Let us
Um,
know.
I'm doing my work.
I saw that list of schools. I don't think you have or tell me if I'm
The
mistaken.
elementary
charter-
schools that are public, no charter schools are on there, no private schools are on there. It's only public schools.
Yeah, but some of the charter schools are public. You don't want to
That
include those?
no charter schools are on there. When the vote was made, there was nothing said about charter schools and there was nothing said about parochial schools.
Then
This is a starting point.
But it's
Okay.
just a resolution. We don't need specifics.
This is a starting point. It was after the accident. This is what was said. That's what was voted on.
So we good, Dominic?
Yeah, great.
Let's
Adam,
start.
is that okay, Adam? Adam,
Yeah, to do a June meeting, that sounds great. I think
Okay.
give folks more time to think it through and see everything.
Okay.
Contact me on your lunch hour tomorrow. Call me. I'll get the calendar. I'll have everything in order and I'll have it ready for you.
okay, thanks, everybody. We won't vote on this tonight, but it was an important discussion and I hope we can vote on something in the June meeting and call it a resolution.
We will do it.
Thanks for your interest and energy, everybody.
Good night.
All right,
Good
have a
night. We're
good night.
closing.
Night.
What's the term?
You, Adam.
Oh, do you need a motion?
Motion,
I'll motion.
please.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to
All right,
adjourn.
I'll second or first, whatever. Okay. Bye. Good night, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you, Florence.
Brendan, are we done?
We're